Let us begin, chat. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. Happy Friday, everybody. My name is Alok Kanoja. Just a reminder that although I'm a psychiatrist, nothing we discuss on stream is intended to be taken as medical advice. Everything we're going to be talking about today is just for educational or entertainment purposes only. If you all have a concern or a question, please go see a licensed professional. Happy Friday, chat. How's everybody doing? It's Friday time, as y'all pointed out. So I just wanted to give a brief shout out. So right at the end of last stream, we had someone named W Chill drop like 100 gifted subs or something insane. So thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who supports the stream through subs, donations, Twitch Prime subs. It all helps us build mental health resources. So we're grateful for the support. No pressure in terms of giving or not giving, do whatever y'all feel is comfortable. We're just going to take that support that y'all give us and do our best with it to try to support questions that the community has, build resources for y'all, things like that. So we're very grateful. And low-key, that W Chill just slipped it in, just as we were kind of leaving. So, I noticed that after we had finished our raid. So thank you very much for the support. We really appreciate it. Every little bit helps. So today, let's just talk quickly about a couple things. Seiko 5 is saying only 10 days till the new guide. I hope so, right? So hopefully everything is on track and we'll be able to release on time. It does seem like everything is on track. We really are going to shoot for that, and hopefully there won't be any delays. And as always, please let us know, what you found useful about the guide, what you didn't find useful about the guide. It's a slightly different direction. It's a longer guide than the previous guides were. We explore some more advanced concepts and things like that. And we also do a lot of nuts and bolts stuff around how your mind works, where thoughts come from, how to develop the right actions. And by right, we all want to do stuff. The basic issue is we can't do it, right? I have things that I want to do, I just can't bring myself to do them. And so this guide is Dr. K's guide to ADHD and doing stuff. Because it's how does a human being do stuff? And these are the kinds of nuts and bolts concepts that I really think are missing from Western education. So it's our, humble take on how we understand that, how I understand that. So there are clinical perspectives, neuroscience perspectives, spiritual perspectives. Take what fits with you. It's not all, 100% truth by any means. And so hopefully it'll be helpful for y'all to understand a little bit more about how the brain works, how the brain decides what actions to take. And furthermore, once we understand that internal process of what is the equation of motivation, we can start to alter the variables in that equation to help us sort of act in the way that we want to. Couple of other things. So we do have the Connect the Dots challenge running right now. So we'll kind of see how that's going. It's our hardest community challenge yet. Doesn't mean that y'all can't participate or shouldn't participate. The whole point is that y'all have done such an awesome job at knocking everything out of the park that we decided that we really wanted to develop a challenge that people have to collaborate on. So that's ongoing. Today, we're going to be doing a call-in stream, but before we hop into call-ins, and what we're going to be talking about today is who do you want to be and what's holding you back? So we're going to be talking to a couple people in our community about that. Before we do that, though, I wanted to talk to y'all about this. So someone in our subreddit asked us to comment, interesting paper on porn, would be interesting to hear what Dr. K says about it. It's funny because I actually read this paper last night and was thinking about commenting on it anyway. So thank you very much. If y'all have concerns about, a particular paper, please let us know and we'll take a look. So let's try to understand what this paper says. So there's a paper that talks about pornography consumption as an existential escape from boredom. So this is this paper sort of talks about why people use pornography and what pornography use is associated with. And they basically make this discovery that perceived meaninglessness predicted increased pornography use. And so what the paper sort of posits and what the popular media kind of digests this as is that people who are directionless in life and people for whom life has no meaning or sense of purpose are more likely to use pornography. So this article, I think, is a fantastic example of how mental health is more than mental illness. So when we look at a problem like pornography, what we tend to find is that we sort of think about it like in a pathologic way, right? So pornography usage, there's a pornography addiction, it's a clinical illness, it requires treatment, and that could be true. So we know that there are treatments for addictions. But the other thing that I really learned working for years as an addiction psychiatrist is that there's more to addiction than treatment. So one of the things that we tend to find in addiction treatment is a big part of becoming sober. And remember that the vast majority of people actually become sober without any clinical intervention. So if you look at it statistically, most people achieve sobriety either on their own or through some kind of support group that isn't necessarily clinical in nature, like Alcoholics Anonymous, Computer Gaming Addicts Anonymous, things like that. And so that's kind of interesting, right? So how are people able to achieve sobriety without clinical help? I'm not recommending that you necessarily go without clinical help, but it's important to understand. And one of the key things that we understand about addiction is that you have to have a good reason to quit. So if we understand, like, at the core, what is an addiction? An addiction is an easy way to get particular needs met. And so, like, if let's say I'm struggling with negative emotions and I've got two options, right? I can either work through those emotions, learn to accept those emotions, sit with those emotions, or I can use pornography or a video game or some kind of substance to make those emotions go away. And the core problem with addiction is that it's just easier to use the substance than it is to do the work. And so what we tend to find is, how do you convince someone, or how does someone find the strength to pick the hard way, the meaning, the kind of like long-lasting, helpful way? And that's through finding some kind of purpose, or what I would call a competing interest. So in order to overcome an addiction, you've got to have a why. It's not sufficient to tell you, okay, these are the 6 steps that you have to do to overcome an addiction. In order to actually overcome it, you have to have a why. And so that's why this paper is so interesting, because it actually explores how pornography usage correlates with a sense of meaninglessness in life. So we'll kind of look at it in a little bit more detail. So what they basically looked at was, when someone has perceived meaninglessness, what we tend to find is that there may be an association with frequency of pornography use, but there seem to be some intermediate steps. So when we have a meaningless or directionless life, we become more bored more easily. As we become bored more easily, that creates all kinds of different problems. We engage in more emotional avoidance, and as we're looking for methods of emotional avoidance, it increases our pornography use. So one of the interesting implications of this paper is that if you're struggling with pornography, if you can develop meaningfulness in life, if you can develop purpose in life, then what that would theoretically do, and this paper doesn't kind of go that far, right? So they're still sort of figuring this out, is that developing purpose could be one way that you overcome a pornography addiction. And that's like exactly what we find, that overcoming an alcohol addiction or heroin usage or things like that, you've got to have a purpose, right? Why am I on this earth? What makes it worth it? Why should I suffer through sobriety? I have to have a damn good reason. And so the paper sort of explores this concept, which I think is really, really useful, because it gives us a future direction of potentially overcoming pornography use. It gives us something else that we can work on, which is essentially finding purpose, okay? So we're just going to go over a couple of lines from the paper. So we predicted a significant indirect serial relationship between meaninglessness and people's frequency of pornography consumption, okay? We substituted, here's the things. Our predictions were framed using the tenets of the existential escape hypothesis. This framework premises that people who experience existential threats to meaning in life, such as boredom, may seek to escape from perceived meaninglessness signaled by those threats by engaging in hedonic behaviors. So what this hypothesis essentially says is that if we don't have any purpose in life, we may experience boredom, and our antidote to boredom, if we have nothing to move towards, is just going to be hedonic pursuits. It's going to be chasing dopamine, okay? And this paper sort of supports that. And what I think is really interesting about this is for a long time, we've been trying to figure out how coaching is successful. So for example, people who are in our coaching program for 16 to 20 weeks will experience a 58% increase in a sense of purpose or direction in life. And so what we tend to also find is that we'll see reductions, either 25 to 45% reductions in some clinical scales like depression or anxiety. And this is where people will sort of sometimes actually come into coaching for the wrong reasons because they sort of use it as a substitute for therapy. It's not a substitute for therapy. It's not budget therapy. What it is a way to build purpose in your life. It's a way to build direction. It's a way to figure out what's my internal compass. It's not actually about pathologically fixing an addiction, treating depression, or treating anxiety. But I think this paper precisely showcases how moving towards a positive goal and finding purpose in your life is going to reverberate and ripple out into clinical benefits. And what I've seen as a clinician is that the patients who are the most successful are the ones that don't just engage in treatment. They're the ones who focus on building a positive life. The challenge is that if you look at like clinical medicine, right? So clinical medicine is not about, when you go to medical school, no one teaches you how to build a healthy life, right? So like we get a very, very small amount of education on nutrition. We don't really get a whole lot on exercise. We don't get a whole lot on nutrition. We don't get a whole lot on purpose, meaning. None of these things they teach medical doctors, right? What do we learn about? We learn about heart attacks. We learn about PTSD. We learn about surgery and gunshot wounds and cancer. But what we tend to find is also, if you look at cancer survivor research, it's people who have meaning, purpose, direction, a reason to live that can in some way correlate with positive outcomes. The question is, how do you build that part of your life? And that's literally why we started the coaching program. So the reason that I, as a psychiatrist, chose to develop a coaching program is because I think psychiatry is like actually quite good, right? So we're really good at what we do. But what I noticed in our society today, as more and more people are becoming addicted to pornography, is that the source of this isn't just like a clinical thing. The source of this is that pornographic behaviors, video game addiction, doom scrolling, all of these things are mediated by things like boredom, mediated by no reason to be alive, right? And so you can sort of think about that as suicidality, but this is where like the ultimate antidote to suicidality, even in terms of treatment, is helping people find a reason to live. And so this is really important to understand. If y'all are struggling with a particular problem and you're trying to figure out, why can't I invest the necessary energy to tolerate the hardship of improving my life? That's because there's a lack of purpose. You have to have a why. We can tell you scientifically the 6 steps that you have to do, right? If you're struggling with an addiction, like we can lay out clinically, go see a therapist, go see a psychiatrist, engage in some kind of peer support, right? Like we know what the answers are. The challenge is that we don't bring ourselves to do it. And why is that? It's because we don't have a reason. And then the question is, can you actually go through a specific process that will help someone develop a sense of purpose and direction in life? And that's what I'm confident to say based on internal initial data, which now we're expanding our studies. We're doing better controlled studies with larger population sizes. We feel really confident based on this original result of a 58% increase in a sense of direction or purpose, that like, okay, now we're like applying for grants and stuff like that so we can do proper controlled studies, right? So we have to verify this data, but like I'm really confident that when we take this kind of approach, it's a little bit more like, you know, this is where we draw not just on principles of psychology and neuroscience, but we draw on principles of meaning, purpose, stuff from like the meditative traditions, the yogic tradition, the Buddhist tradition. And when you help people sort of develop detachment, find direction, it tends to lead to positive results. And what I think is really cool about this paper is it's showing us that we have a society that is addicted to all kinds of stuff. And so as a clinician, what I see is someone who's addicted to binge watching, addicted to video games, addicted to pornography. And are these three separate neuroscientific, discrete pathologies in someone's brain? I don't think so. I think they share a common root. And the cool thing about this sort of existential meaninglessness hypothesis is it posits that any time you lack direction in life, you're going to be bored. When you're bored, you're going to seek hedonic stimuli. And that hedonic stimuli will manifest as all of these dopaminergic behaviors. And we have a society that's giving us this stuff, right? We're getting better and better. Pornography is becoming more accessible, more extreme. Content is becoming more clickbaity, more extreme. Video games are becoming more enveloping. There's community aspects, there's trophies, there's rewards, there's DLCs. The game never ends. And so we're getting more and more hedonic stimuli. And like, how do you overcome this? What this paper would suggest is it starts with finding purpose. And this is what I think is missing as we start to chase results, materialism, external things, and even trophies or accomplishments within video games. We lose sight of like, what am I doing on this earth? And so what I would strongly recommend is if this resonates with you, right? So to spend some time trying to figure out what my purpose is. If you feel like you're struggling from an addiction, absolutely get a clinical evaluation. If you don't have a purpose in life, look for one. And for people who are like, I don't know how to do that, that's like literally why we have a coaching program, right? So like we've been able to demonstrate that consistently across hundreds or thousands of people, we've been able to help people find their purpose. And it's absolutely like, it can be sort of scientific, I don't know if that's a fair way to say. Yeah, I guess you can say that. Right? There are methodologies which have been explored throughout the history of humanity which help people find purpose. The problem is that we just don't teach that, right? Like you have math, you have science, you have social studies, you don't have how to find meaning in life. So fantastic paper. Really, really you got to really be concerned, because if you're someone who struggles with being bored and then you reach from something hedonistic, the other interesting finding of this paper is that the frequency and intensity of your boredom also correlates with lacking purpose in life. And so what we are starting to see is that if you really want to get control of your mental health, should you treat the mental illness? 100%. But it's so much more than that. There are more global effects of the meaning of the value of finding purpose in life that'll have ripple effects in all of these different mental illness domains. Make sense? Questions? So IZ8 is asking, over the next few years, do you think video games will get advanced enough where we can find purpose within games? So I think in a sense, we're already there. So people have purpose within a game, right? So like I've worked with people who are in top guilds in competitive MMORPGs that will have world firsts. And so they actually derive a lot of purpose in the video game. The challenge is that purpose that you derive from the video game lives only within the video game, right? So when you go to bed at night, when you wake up, when you go on vacation, when you meet someone, that purpose doesn't really extend out into the real world. Now we're starting to see some blending there too. So even if you think about content creators, right? So if you're a gamer on Twitch, the purpose that you find in GTA RP within the video game actually blends over into real life. But I think the core problem is that real purpose is not found externally, it's found internally. I don't think that has any chance of changing anytime soon. And that's why it's important to figure out, okay, what is like a consistent process that I can go through that will help me discover purpose. And so there's a process, right? There are questions. There have been lots and lots of historic data about how you find purpose. So a good example of this is if you look at the karmic traditions, right? They'll talk about this concept of dharma, which is duty or responsibility. And the key thing about dharma is it's what allows you to do the hard thing in life. That's the value of it. So for example, do I enjoy being on call for 24 hours? No, I don't enjoy it. It's not fun. It's not the same as like playing a video game. But do I willingly do it even though it's hard and leads to exhaustion? Absolutely, because it's aligned with my purpose. So that's the key thing. And then the other interesting thing is that this is a spiritual concept, right? So then like, what about the science of it? Well, this is what's really cool, is if you look at the current evolutions of evidence-based psychotherapy treatments, the first version of psychotherapy was basically psychoanalysis. Then we had the behaviorists who showed up and gave us cognitive behavioral therapy. And now we have what's called the third wave of psychotherapy, with things like dialectical behavioral therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy. So these are the new kind of evidence-based treatments. And what we tend to find is what's different about them, they incorporate these Eastern concepts. So dialectical behavioral therapy is rooted in something called Advaita Vedanta. And someone who is struggling with a particular illness themselves as a psychologist learned this stuff, like went through treatment themselves, went and studied meditation, mindfulness, Buddhism, and they were like, wow, this actually helps me. Not necessarily more than treatment, but this is what treatment is missing. And then they brought that in and developed their own kind of treatment protocol. And what they found is that this is the gold standard now of treatment for borderline personality disorder, which we haven't been able to treat very well. And acceptance and commitment therapy is a very, very, very strong, has a strong effect size, especially for addictions. And so it's about acceptance, right? It's not about trying to change things. In fact, it's sort of like the more that you try to change things, the more that you try to control things, the worse off you get, which is kind of bizarre. So this concept of acceptance is like rooted in the East. Can we summarize the research? Which link the paper? Sure. Link. The title of the paper is Pornography Consumption as an Existential Escape from Boredom. It's also linked on our subreddit, if you guys just log into that. Do you think dopamine reset is clinically proven? No. Most of the stuff about dopamine is not clinically proven. What do I think about Man's Search for Meaning? I think it's a great example, Loblo Hall, of, and we're going to hop into Collins in a second. I think it's a great example of when something is true, it can be discovered by anyone who investigates. So this is where, like, the karmic religions did not invent dharma, right? They didn't invent these concepts. What they did was discover them. And if they're true, just like the theory of gravity, other people who independently explore this stuff should come to the same conclusion. And I think what we discover from Man's Search for Meaning is it's an independent, I don't know that Viktor Frankl like studied Eastern philosophy. I think this was like his own personal exploration and this discovery that he made, which is like very, very congruent with what yogis in the East discovered. It's also very congruent with like Stoic philosophy, right? So if something is true in the world, anyone who explores that should find the same thing. Right? If a seed turns into a tree, anyone who studies that should find the same thing. So is purpose synonymous with passion? No, I wouldn't say so. So that's where I actually really like Sanskrit for this reason, because I think that Sanskrit has a lot of sophistication for these terms that, frankly, I think is superior to English. So English has like terms that are cobbled together from lots of different words. I mean, languages, right? And so I don't know that any of those, like, so it's not synonymous with passion. So what I think of as dharma is not passion. It's not what you're passionate about. Dharma, the best translation of dharma is duty. So that's the key thing. When we think about passion, it's something that I find personally gratifying. The whole point of dharma is that it doesn't have to be personally gratifying, but I'm still motivated towards it, right? It's what I should do. Could you elaborate on acceptance part versus change? Let me think about whether I can do this. I think we've got people waiting for call-ins, so I'm going to do my best. So our call-in stream today is going to be around who do you want to be and what's holding you back. So if any of our callers has this acceptance versus change thing, because I have a feeling this will come up, I'll explain it then. If not, we'll set aside some time to try to do a lecture on it in the future. Okay, but let's hop into call-ins because people are waiting. All righty. Hello, we ready to go? Yep, go. Looks good.
Okay. Hello?
Hello. Welcome, friend.
Hello. It's nice to be here.
It's
Very
nice to have you.
Can you see and hear me all right?
I can, but you are not on stream. Just so
Yeah,
okay. I may make a mistake at some point, but the goal is not to show your face. So
yeah.
welcome.
I mean, I feel like I can communicate with my face too. That's why I put my camera.
That's why I appreciate it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna say a lot more with my face, to be honest.
Okay. So today we're talking a little bit about who do you want to be and what's holding you back. Is that right?
Yeah. So I'm actually a little surprised they picked me because I kind of didn't directly answer it. I kind of answered it by saying, it's more like I don't really want to be anything. And the reason being is that I feel like if I choose to be something in particular, I'm going to be giving up something that might also be genuinely what I want.
Okay. That sounds like I can totally understand why they picked you, right? So, and first,
Yeah.
can we start with what you go by, my friend?
My name is Johnny.
Okay. So Johnny, tell me a little bit more about that. So so it sounds like you're kind of feeling a little stuck.
I wouldn't use the word stuck because I've actually spent a lot of time with this.
Okay.
And I'm going to actually give you some background.
Please.
So since 2006, 2007, I have on my own free time studied some Eastern spirituality stuff. So it's been almost 15 years for me.
Wow.
So I think this might be interesting for us to talk about.
Sure.
And part of it actually came even before the spiritual stuff, but I was always worried if I became something, well, what am I letting go of? And the tricky thing is, well, I don't even know what I am in the first place. So like, aren't I just changing identities? And aren't identities constantly changing? So like, why pick something if I can always just keep changing? Like adapt to the moment.
Okay. So that's a good question. Do you have an answer?
So my answer is kind of, it's hard for me to pick something to go towards, but if a situation arises where a certain role is better, I feel like I can adopt a certain role socially because it'll work out better in the way I want it.
Okay.
So that's sort of how uh picking a certain identity helps. But
Okay.
I get in this place where I'm like, I don't know how to talk about it because I don't really want to be the identity, but I can adopt it for the sake of like social stuff.
I'm with you. So let me make sure I understand. Okay. So the first thing is that I'm sort of noticing that you don't know what identity to adopt sometimes, or you don't know who you want to be, let's say, because if you become something, you could be missing out on something else,
Yeah.
right? That's first issue. Second thing is that if you're presented with a particular option, you can adopt that identity, but it's not really necessarily who you are. You're almost like playing a role.
Yeah, like right now I'm giving you my more stream, more fun role instead of being kind of neutral, which is
Okay.
kind of how I was right before the stream.
Okay. And so so first question, Johnny, is this a problem in some way?
I don't know if it's a problem, but it seems like a not a problem to me, but like everyone around me kind of think it's a problem. Like, people are very adamant that I have goals, but it's not that I don't dislike goals, but my goals tend to happen when there's a problem in front of me. If there's nothing wrong, I almost have like zero goals and I just kind of go with things.
So that sounds pretty chill.
Yeah, so is
Is
this I guess I kind of want to ask because I did kind of get into spirituality
uh-huh.
in a not so good way.
Okay.
So sometimes I'm hesitant to explain or I guess kind of be what I am because I kind of got into spirituality to numb myself unintentionally.
Okay.
Well, right now I'm not anymore. Like, I don't know. You can see my face. Like, I'm not completely like bleh
Can
anymore,
you help
but
me understand what you mean by you got into spirituality to numb yourself?
yeah, basically I started meditating to stop feeling things.
Okay. Did that work?
Actually, it did for like 3 years.
Okay. And then what happened?
Life sucked.
Life
It was just
sucked.
it was boring basically. Like
Okay.
I didn't care about anything.
You were
I
numb and you
was
didn't care. And then what happened?
mm, I kind of got a bit suicidal because
Okay.
I didn't care,
Okay.
and I guess I started caring again because I met some pretty good people.
Okay.
And I guess after that, the weirdest thing, instead of meditating to numb my feelings, I noticed I can meditate to actually feel more.
Okay. Good. And then what
And
happened?
it's honestly a lot of things have happened. The suicide part, it comes and goes actually,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not very frequent anymore. And I've really kind of just been exploring like mostly identity and goals and what's good, what's right and wrong. And it's just, I don't know. I'm at the point where none of this actually makes sense anymore.
Sure.
It can make sense when I think about it, but like just because when I think about it and if I try to make sense of it, sure. But if I don't, it's like they never existed at all. Like there was
I,
never a problem
I,
or an issue.
I think I'm sort of with you, Johnny. So a couple of things. The first thing is that, if you are feeling suicidal or you're in danger or anything, I don't know if you've ever been in clinical treatment before, but that's worth looking into. We
Well,
don't
that was a
necessarily.
long time ago. I'm not that at that point anymore.
Okay, so just to share that because I think the discussion will be incomplete. We don't have to focus on that today, but since we're not going to be focusing on that, I just wanted to mention it. So here's the thing. Let me ask you a couple questions, Johnny.
Yeah.
First is, would you say that you're at peace?
I think we need to define peace first, because are you talking about feeling? Like, does it feel peaceful or is okay? How would you define peace? Because
Okay,
that's
I'm
something.
I'm going to say no. So
Okay,
anytime I ask that question and someone asks, how do you define peace? I'm just going to assume no. So, like,
all right.
I know it's kind of weird. Maybe that's a little bit arrogant, but I think that peace is like sort of a subjective experience of contentment and tranquility. And oftentimes, when someone asks me in a logical way, like, where are the boundaries of peace? The answer is sort of no. People who are at peace kind of know that they're at peace.
What if I don't know if I'm at peace because I don't
That
really
means
know
that you're
what
not
peace
there.
means? Okay.
Okay. So I'm
What if
making
I don't?
assumptions here, which is okay.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure because now we're going to get to where that lack of peace comes from. Okay. So you said if I
Oh.
become something,
Mm-hmm.
what am I losing out on?
Yeah.
Right? What's wrong with losing out on something?
I feel like becoming something makes me less adaptable.
What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it. It's just I have a preference to adapt over being something very specific.
Where does that preference come from?
I don't know. I guess I just like exploring things. I kind of want to have everything instead of being hyper focused on one thing.
Yep. Right. So why? Let me think if I can ask this question in a different way. So you like exploring things. I know this is going to sound kind of weird. Do you like exploring things out of like a positive feeling? And I'm not necessarily meaning emotion, or a negative feeling?
Can I say both?
Yes. Can you help me understand that?
Uh, so this is something kind of recent, but I actually it's hard for me to identify positive and negative emotion. More like it's not that I don't have them, it's more
Hmm.
like the label positive and negative. I
Yep.
mostly just use does it feel good or does it feel bad? But one isn't more positive or more negative. They're just different.
Okay.
So I guess you could say I enjoy both feelings that feel good and feelings that are discomfortable because they're just feelings.
Yep. Good. So I'll kind of ask again. So, like, what's the harm in losing out on experiences?
I don't know if there's a harm. It's more of a, I feel like I'm giving away part of my like freedom to choose if I be something specific.
What's wrong with giving away a part of your freedom to choose?
I just like having options.
Why?
Mm, Honestly, if I didn't have options, I can adapt to whatever I'm being asked to do, and that's fine too.
So I have no doubt that you can adapt. You've shown us that you can adapt and you have adapted over and over and over again. What I'm
hmm
asking is, what is the origin of your preference for freedom over not freedom?
I think it has to do with the way I grew up. Like, I had a lot of freedom to kind of just do whatever I wanted, so I did a lot of things.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was kind of just left to my own devices growing up. So I just did whatever I wanted as long as I did good in school.
And what was that like for you?
It was cool being able to do a lot of things, but at the same time, it was kind of isolating because I was just doing things to kind of pass time.
Okay. So have you Okay, so let me toss something out, Johnny. Let me see if you're so generally speaking, when I hear people say something like, if I become something, what am I missing out on?
hmm
I kind of hear some amount of like loss aversion there. So like what I'm almost hearing is like, if I had to guess, and this is tricky because you're clearly, you've done a lot of spiritual practice. So I see this
hmm
as like, you have so much spiritual resistance to some particular things and you have so much spiritual growth that it doesn't quite affect you the way that it would like the average person. That's what makes this kind of tricky. So,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
your ability to tolerate particular fears or anxieties or negative things, your ability to accept those makes it sort of like they're not as, it's not as clear. But what I'm essentially hearing is that, you know, I'm almost hearing some amount of like safety, loss aversion, or fear. Does that resonate with you at all?
A tiny bit. If there's a loss aversion, I guess I'm averse to losing free time because I like just being with myself a lot.
So, but what makes it? Why would you have to lose free time?
Mm. Like, I guess when I be something, I get kind of hyper focused where I forget to slow down and relax sometimes.
Is that a problem?
Only if I get burnt out, but I'm not afraid of the burnout. It's more of a when the burnout happens, it sucks, but I'm okay with it when it happens.
Okay. So, generally speaking, Johnny, we avoid things when we're afraid of the consequences. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So, what I'm trying to figure out, what I'm getting from you is that there's some amount of avoidance, right? You're saying that if I become something, I lose out on something else. I become less adaptable, right?
Yeah.
So,
hmm
what I'm hearing there is that you value adaptability.
Absolutely.
Why do you value adaptability? Where did you
Oh,
learn the value of adaptability?
it's definitely my comfort zone because growing up, I kind of had a lot of anxiety, so I had to learn to adapt to everything that kind of came at me.
Okay. And so if you're not able to adapt, what does that mean for you?
I'm probably gonna freak out although it doesn't really happen very much anymore.
So that's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
So, what I'm sort of hearing is that if you become something, you lose adaptability. If you lose adaptability, then you're no longer able to protect yourself against freaking out.
Hmm.
What do you think about that?
Never really considered that. So that's pretty cool.
But what do you think about it?
Mhm. I think it's interesting, but I don't know if it's like, hmm, well, it's so new to me that I don't really have a response to it, if I'm being honest.
That's fair enough. That's great. So it's clear you're a contemplative person. So my point is that when I hear you talk, I'm getting some kind of fear or aversion, and it makes sense, right? So like what I'm hearing is that adaptability is protective for you. And so sacrificing your adaptability means opening yourself up to not being able to adapt to crap that happens, right? Because if you can't adapt, then you're going to have to suffer.
Hmm.
Like, where would you be if you couldn't adapt? What would your life be like, Johnny?
If I couldn't adapt, I feel like I'd just be at rock bottom.
There we go. Right? So now
Yeah.
we understand, like, okay, so making a choice and becoming something is in a weird, indirect way connected to hitting rock bottom. Do you see that?
I'm starting to see the connection, but I'm not sure if I'm completely there.
That's totally fine. So that's something for you to think about. Here's the other thing. Since you've spent a lot of time spiritually exploring stuff.
Hmm.
So, you know how you were saying earlier that when you adopt a particular identity, that's sort of
Yeah.
like an act?
Yeah.
Who is the you that's underneath the act?
That's the weird thing. I have no idea. And I
Okay.
stopped, well, I actually saw a guru to kind of talk about that a few months ago, but then she kind of hushed me and said, just kind of pay attention and watch it carefully. And I've kind of just stopped questioning it and just paying attention. And
And what have you?
honestly,
Yeah,
it just seems like not things don't make sense, but the not making sense makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense.
it makes sense. So, can you tell me anything about the you that's underneath the act?
It's hard to describe it because I don't know if there's a thing, but I remember having this kind of experience where, well, I kind of talked to someone about this and it was like I could feel something that's not a feeling. It's like I can feel and it feels deeply, but it's not related to feeling an emotion. And that thing feels very intimate,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that's me or something else. It's just something that was kind of new.
Yeah. So I think you've got it right, Johnny. So
Hmm.
when people in ancient India tried to understand the you underneath, they came up with one description, and that was neti neti, which means not this, not this. So the you underneath, what they discovered is if you ask it, is it good? They'll say no. Is it bad? They'll say no. Is it old? They'll say no. Is it young? They'll say no. Is it outside? No. Is it inside? No. It's like a thing. I like your description that it's intimate, but it's formless, but it's real. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So now I've got a question for you. You're afraid of adapting and becoming something, and then you won't be something else. So I've got a question. What is it that changes within you when you adapt? Is it the part on top or the part in the middle?
Oh, it's the part on top. The middle thing is like it doesn't give a damn, to be honest. Like I can be an absolute monkey and it doesn't give a damn. Or I
So
can be like an absolute saint, doesn't care.
so this is why, like, what I would ask you is then why does it matter? Right? So like you can become whatever you want to, but the truth of the matter is I don't know how to say this, but you're only what you are.
Hmm.
You can't be anything else.
Yeah, so I guess the thing is the I don't like using outside and inside because even that doesn't make sense anymore. But just for the sake of communication with words, that it makes sense. But on the outside, it's like if I become something, I feel like I'm giving away part of that freedom that I know on the inside, where like I don't have to be that if I didn't want to. But yet I can still make the choice to be something.
Yeah.
But it definitely takes a while.
So here's what I'd say. The problem or the conflict that you have is on the outside. Has nothing to
Hmm.
do with on the inside. There are layers between completely outside and completely inside. The completely inside part doesn't really care. And this is
Hmm.
where I don't know how to say this, but like essentially, I think that your problem is sort of false. And I know it's weird to say. I wouldn't say that
Oh, it makes
unless we,
sense.
right? Because it's all the crap on the outside. It's all like mental faculties where you're loss averse in some way because if you adapt, or so have you ever heard of the concept of a stem cell?
I've heard the word, but I don't quite know what it is.
So like when we're single, so like when a human being forms, the first thing that
Hmm.
forms is an embryo, and that's an egg plus a sperm, and it's one cell. Okay, the first thing that happens is like you're one cell with your 46 chromosomes. You're not an eye cell, you're not a heart cell, you're not a stomach cell, you're not a neuron, you're not a skin cell. You're just one cell. And then that cell divides into two, and then that cell divides into four. Those cells divide into four and eight, and so on and so forth. Those things are called stem cells.
Yeah.
And certain stem cells are called pluripotent stem cells, which means that this cell can become whatever it wants to.
Hmm.
Then what happens is the cell differentiates. And the moment that it differentiates, it loses some potentiality.
Hmm.
So then you'll have, like, for example, bone marrow cells. And cells in
Yeah.
your bone marrow can become white blood cells or red blood cells, but they cannot become neurons.
Hmm.
So the deepest part of you is like a pluripotent stem cell, and it's actually never going to change. The more that you differentiate, do you lose particular things? Actually, yes. But why is that a problem?
Is it even a problem?
Right? So a part of you thinks so because a part of you is afraid that if you adapt in one way and something happens negative and you're not able to adapt to that thing, then you will suffer. Agreed?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So like you're so afraid of like you never want to put your money down in one direction. You want to stay, like
Oh, I always have one foot out the door just in case, you know?
right? So and I think that's where you've got to be really, really careful because there are a couple of things, and this you have to decide the direction that you want. I'm assuming for a moment, and I do think that you need to be able to do things in a particular direction and have faith in yourself that if problems arise, like you're going to be adaptable enough.
Yeah, yeah. Especially already putting myself out there in these situations. Like, apparently I am adaptable, even when I'm not trying to adapt.
Right? So I think that this is all BS at the top. And anytime you're worried about it, Johnny, just go back underwater. Just go beneath the surface. And once you're at underneath the surface, the more there's a connection between the top and the bottom, the more you will be at peace.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that. It feels like I'm kind of connecting what I know on the inside to kind of the more conventional outside, whereas like it's almost kind of hard to distinguish in and out at times.
And so let me ask you something. The more difficult it is to distinguish in and out, how do you feel about stuff?
Oh, I feel incredible. Like it feels peaceful.
There it is.
It just doesn't happen automatically. Sometimes it takes intention. Sometimes it is automatic. So it actually gets to the point where I don't even know what a choice is even more anymore.
Right? So I think it's interesting that you use the word peaceful because earlier you were asking me to define it. But
Yeah.
now as I see your face, I think you know what it means.
This is why I wanted to put my camera on because I want to visually show you that I'm not just trying to make things up.
No, I know you're not. I can
Mhm.
tell. And I think going forward, Johnny, I would say that be aware that it's that loss aversion that kind of restricts you in some way. And the other thing is, it's like okay for you to not conquer that right this second. And at the same time, like, I don't know how to say this, but you just don't have to be afraid of that. Could bad things happen if you make a choice and commit to something? Yes. Bad things can happen. But you don't have to be afraid of them. And in fact, when we start letting the fear of bad things restrict our choices, control our choices, that's when we begin to suffer. So if I'm dating someone and I think to myself, if I marry this person, what if we get divorced? What if they're not the one? What if I spend 10 years with this person and the person that I was really supposed to marry, I never end up meeting or spending time with? And so what
That's a
can
lot
happen?
of.
Huh?
I was gonna say like that's a lot of what ifs instead of seeing what is.
Well said. And so
I've
then
noticed.
what am I
Uh,
letting go? If I become something, what am I letting go? That was your question. To which I would say that's a lot of what ifs instead of what is.
yeah, so I guess I'm letting go of all the what ifs.
100%. And what does it feel like to let go of the what ifs?
Nice. I like
Peaceful.
it a lot.
Peaceful.
It definitely takes a little bit of deliberate action right now, but sometimes
100%.
it's automatic.
Yep. And the more you deliberately practice, the more automatic it will be.
I'm gonna be honest. After 3 months of this, it's gotten easier, but I also slightly wish I was better. But at the same time, I'm not arguing with the fact that I wish it was better.
Well
If
said.
that makes sense.
Yeah, makes perfect sense, right? So you're recognizing that there's a part of you that wants to improve, and you can follow that voice, but only to a certain extent.
Yeah.
There should also be forgiveness that, I mean, how can we expect you to be perfect when you were born, Johnny?
What even is perfect?
Right?
Only happens when you think about it, right?
100%. Perfection is created in the mind. What is reality is what is. So, in a weird way, I think you have all the answers. They just need to be put together for you a little bit.
Yeah, when I spoke to her, she just hushed me up and said, just pay attention.
Which is also the right answer in a different way. It's just not how I operate. I've had teachers like that. I personally found that frustrating, but it's not wrong.
Yeah, that's why I kind of want to ask you because that was a very quick conversation with her.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Johnny, just as we're kind of like, because I think, what was the question you asked me and what was the answer that I gave you or that we came to together?
So could you repeat that again?
Yeah. What was the question you asked me?
Oh, the question I asked you at the start when we were
Yeah.
talking, or just now? So do I have to become something? Because I don't want to lose my adaptability.
And what
And
what
you're
have we learned together today?
that I can just commit and adapt while I'm committing, and it's okay if things don't turn out well, because I'll adapt to the not turning out well.
Great. And if you feel bad at some point, where can you find peace?
Oh, there's nothing wrong with feeling bad. Feeling bad is just feeling bad.
Okay. Well said. Any questions for me before we wrap up?
Uh, Not really, other than I guess I mostly came on because I'm just hoping I'm not like doing any like spiritual bypassing because being there once, I never, I mean, if I go back there again, I'll get out, but I just don't want to go back there again where I'm kind of disregarding an aspect of life to try to get this like false peace that I thought I had when I was younger.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So what I'm hearing is that sometimes people can use spirituality as an escape
Hmm.
and not really is like a positive thing. And I think I don't know how to say this, Johnny, that's something that the more you respect that possibility, I think the better off you're going to be. And I can't tell you that that'll never happen again. Whether that
Yeah.
happens again depends on your vigilance.
Hmm.
But I have faith in you. I think you're doing great. And I think just keep doing what you're doing. And I'm not worried about you for what that's worth.
Yeah. I've I like to. I guess I think I've kind of recommitted myself to just normal, regular life because that is a part of everything, you know. And I
Good.
thought I was supposed to transcend that, but now I'm just kind of, oh, I get to be a part of it, but not like part of it, but engaged in it. And it's a weird balancing act, to be honest. I'm
Sure.
still trying to get used to it.
So I'll share with you something that one of my teachers told me, and it really helped me because I was ready for it. And I suspect you may
Mhm.
be ready for it too.
Okay.
Johnny, you need to be in the world, but not of
Not
it.
out the world. Oh, I know that one.
Right.
I've been told that before. I know it. Yeah.
So I think as you begin to really understand that, you'll find the balance of, because a lot, and I think you said it well, that transcending doesn't mean leaving.
Yeah, that was a very difficult thing I had to come across.
Yeah.
I feel a bit emotional because I definitely went through I really wanted to numb out so bad when I was younger. But now I love feeling things a lot.
Yeah. I'm happy to hear that, man. It sounds like you went through some really challenging times.
Yeah, yeah. Finding you online definitely helped a lot.
I'm happy to hear that, and fantastic.
And I don't really have anything else to add other than thank you for listening.
Thank you for speaking. I think it helps not only me, but we learned something together today, and it helps hopefully a couple of people out there who are listening. So thank you very much,
Yeah,
Johnny, and good luck to you, my friend.
yeah. I like your smile. Thank you. Bye.
I like yours too. Adios. All right. So I don't know if like people were able to follow that conversation, but let me see if I can try to summarize. So sometimes we're afraid of becoming something because anything that I become is by definition something that I let go. Right? So if I join the red team, I'm not on the blue team. And it's our fear of like missing out on the red team that keeps us from joining the blue team. But if we're not careful, we can go our entire lives worrying about what I will miss and thereby missing most of life. You get that? It's like we're so paranoid about missing out that we never do anything, and then we end up missing out the most. And so this is where I know it sounds kind of weird, but like it's okay to miss out on things, right? You can only make, like, if I have lunch today, I can only eat what I eat, and I can't eat everything. I can't pack all of the joy of all of the potential lunches that I could possibly eat today into one meal. It's impossible. So stop living in the what ifs and start living in the what is. Don't know if that made sense, but that's what we got. All right, let's do next one. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Doing well. Okay. How's it going?
Nice to meet you,
Uh,
my friend.
Nice to meet you as well.
What do you go by?
Dom or Dominic, whatever is easier for you.
Okay, Dom it is.
Perfect. And then just as an FYI, in preparation for this call, I kind of wrote a lot of notes and bullet points I was trying to hit to stay mostly on topic. So
Okay,
just feel free to cut me off whenever if you want to comment
sure.
or
So let's just start with who do you want to be and what's holding you back? And you can read your bullet points if you want to, Dom.
sure. Do you care if I start with a little background
Not at
context?
all.
Perfect. All right. So I come from a very small family. It was just myself, sister, my mom, and dad. Never met anyone on my mom's side of the family. She moved out when she was 16, and they never reached back out to contact her. So we don't know anyone from her side.
Okay.
And then on my dad's side, smaller family as well. Thinking back to just like childhood, around kindergarten is when like I knew that there were issues between like my mom and my dad. It was majority on my dad's side. Um, since then, or I guess now, he's been clinically diagnosed with 8 different mental illnesses.
Holy
So a
crap,
lot
dude.
of those were yeah were pretty intense back then. Just a quick rundown of them. It was bipolar, depression, IED, schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder, hypomania, and hypermania. So there was a a lot of things to unpack growing up, and obviously not knowing too much about it with like mental health stigma. So um, all of those issues that were coming from like my dad's side resulted in my mom like, not feeling safe for either her or myself and my sister to be living at wherever my dad was. He would go missing. There was just a lot of issues, so we moved around a ton, which resulted in my dad's side of the family we would stay with them until like a week or two of being there. They're like, all right, you know what, you got to figure this out. We've never seen this side of him. Like, I think you're overreacting. And there's just a lot of go figure it out on your own. So then we would have to continually move and find new places, or some nights just out of a car. And then eventually 1-bedroom apartment between the three of us, which is perfectly fine. But there's just a lot of us on top of each other, not really any space or separation. And financial struggles were huge with my family. So at one point too, my mom was working 3 jobs at one point, 7 days a week. So it was basically just my sister and I became independent around like, for me, I guess around like 7 or 8 years old. And that's where
That's
I
very
like a
young.
lot. Yeah. So we were basically living on our own. Sister, she's 2 years older. She did very well and helped out. She kind of took on like, here, we'll do the cooking. Like you do. It was just, we kind of ran the house while my mom did everything she could to provide. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit. But senior year of college for me, I was clinically diagnosed with ADHD. So there was a lot of questions that came about that because I always did okay in school, but would struggle with, you know, sitting down studying, completing homework, um, actually learning the information during the class rather than the night before a test, which then, you know, I got into some trouble, or, hey, you didn't do well on this test, or, you know, just different academic struggles. But for bringing that back home, and my mom's doing everything she can, it was like, how am I going to bring more stress when that's like the only focus?
I'm
You
sorry,
know, that I should.
I didn't follow you there.
So let's go with a
You said
better
something
way.
about how am I going to bring more stress? What is the stress that you're bringing, and where are you bringing it to?
Right. So struggling financially, it was, if I want to go to college, I have to get a full ride scholarship.
Got it.
That is the main goal. If you don't get that, then you're not going to college. Good luck. So anytime that I would struggle academically, it would be bringing the point of like, oh, hey, mom, I know you just got back and you're doing everything you can. Things aren't good. You're very stressed. You're trying to make everything great. I'm not doing well in school, which then is, well, you need to. Otherwise, you're not going to college. You're
That's how
smart.
your
You should be
mom
able to
would
figure it out.
respond.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes. It was just obviously she had a lot going on and dealing with. I should just be able to do what I need to because I'm smart. Um, so that was a big struggle throughout high school, and then college. It became a bigger issue with ADHD. Just like, you know, I can't brute force my way through and get away with it basically. But anyway, sorry, I'm trying to re-go through my points. So throughout high school, it was just a lot of tension between family. Never wanted to, or at home, it was always negative. So anytime I was not at home, it was never talk about family, never any of that situation, and always just sacrifice my own well-being to make sure whoever I'm with is happy because I want to be surrounded by happy people. So it was never, I never really, I guess, developed my own personality. It was just adapt to whoever I'm with to make sure that they're happy. Because if they're happy, I feel happy because it's not negative. Um, I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, cool. Um, sorry, I lost my point in my bullet points. I had a full circle thing. Um, going through and going
Dom,
through.
is it? Let's pause for a second. Let me ask you
Sure.
something. How would you feel if you weren't able to make it full circle for me?
Oh, I feel like I had a prime opportunity and I kind of wasted it.
So who are we making it full circle for?
myself.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
There's a whole ton I want to unpack. Okay. Anyway, my main point to the topic is just I want to be able to separate my past from what is current, like the present. I want to take where I am and have future goal. I want to make progress towards that. But it's insanely tough when everything from the past and always feeling like I'm just dealing with an ultimatum of you have to get this or you're screwed. They're very relevant. So how can I separate the two, the past and the present, to then look to the future? Is my main point.
Okay.
And then it's just a common theme of everything always feeling like an ultimatum that I
Yeah,
don't
so
have a choice.
I was going to ask you a question about that. Give me just 1 second. I'm having a slight problem with my headphones.
Definitely.
Okay. So, can you say something?
Hello,
Oh, shit. Say something again?
it's me.
Oh, God. One more time.
Hello.
Nope. Okay. Give me a second. I got to fix my headphones. This is terrible.
No worries.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Keep talking. Count to 10 for me.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
Perfect. Thank you.
9, 10.
All right. So, can you give me an example of an ultimatum now, Dom?
Right now, it feels like survivability. It's struggling with bills, going basically paycheck to paycheck. And if I decide to try to change or, the possibility of let's branch out and change something because maybe it'd be better. If it goes wrong, then I am screwed financially with no support system or backup plan or help from like family. So it's me and only me. And if I do anything wrong, then I don't know.
So, what I'm kind of hearing is that you've got no room to experiment. Like, you can't afford to take a chance, and it's like survival every day.
Correct.
Can I think for a second?
Definitely.
Because that's a lot, man.
Yeah. There's a lot of living in stress, fear, and anxiety. Just all around.
And what I'm hearing is that you really want to escape the legacy of your past.
Yes. It's very hard for me. Setting goals never made sense to me because it was always here's the one outcome, which I guess is technically a goal, but it's either this or like good luck, basically. Like, what else would I do? I don't want to get stuck. Part-time job. I don't, obviously I want to go to college. I had aspirations for those.
And just to clarify, I thought you said you got diagnosed with ADHD. Was that as a senior in college?
Correct.
So did you complete college?
I did.
And it sounds like you're not in a good financial situation right now.
That is correct.
And did you get a degree that you can utilize in a way to help you with financial security, or what's going on there?
Yes and no. The major that I wanted to go into did not go well with classes, so basically failed those. But again, I'm on a 4-year full tuition scholarship, so I can't mess that up because I can't do the extra semester, extra year, because financially it
Yep.
would not be good. So I ended up having to switch majors twice. It's something else that was kind of, I can finish this in the 4 years and just get done with it. So it's not where I want to be. It's not as lucrative of a degree, I suppose, but I do have plans, I guess, kind of set up in my current job and with my manager to hopefully move to more what I want.
Okay.
But at the moment, yes, struggling.
Here's the question. Do you have a degree that allows you in the relative short term to no longer live paycheck to paycheck?
Maybe in the near future, a couple of years, hopefully.
Okay.
To just pick up and move to a different one, no. But for like longevity or staying in a company for growth, yes.
Do you mind if I ask you details about that?
Sure.
So can you tell me like what your degree is, what your current job is, and what the job that you are positioned to become financially independent with is?
So I graduated with human computer interaction, which at the time was very new. So there wasn't really any jobs, at least when I was looking, that were looking for that. Granted, now there are, and it's mostly around UX and UI research. Why do people interact or do things that they do on either their phone or on computers? So that's what I'm trying to go to now. What I started with I've been at the same company was tech support, and then I've then got promoted to become a content writer on the product team. So it's just more documentation.
Okay.
So
But
end goal is UX research.
okay. And what's your path to get there?
Currently in the talk with my manager is we need a UX research for our company. I have the major for it. I just don't have any of the experience, tools, or anything. So it's a company putting all their chips in on me, or just hiring someone else and then I might learn from them.
Why are you thinking about only this company?
Because I feel that my skills aren't enough to warrant going to get hired somewhere else. So if I can stay in the same company and get any kind of experience, it makes me look that much more valuable to then branch elsewhere. I would feel more comfortable in my
Okay.
chances.
And so let me just think about how to ask this. Can I think for another second?
Definitely.
How good of an assessor are you at how good of a fit you are for the job that you want?
Probably not great. I might be a little biased against myself.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So I'll share something. How do you feel? Like when I asked you that question and you shared that answer, like, do you have an emotional reaction that comes with it?
No, it's just always, I don't know if it's an emotion. Granted, like it always feels the same, but it's always an immediate thought of just self worth. Probably not good enough.
Yeah. So here's. So what do you think about yourself, Dom?
Uh, that's a lot with the ADHD, I guess. Like from getting clinically diagnosed and starting prescriptions and talking, it was like, wow, things could have been so much easier. I probably could have been so much more successful. College would have been probably a lot better. Definitely would have been starting in the major that I wanted. Would have been a lot less stress. So a lot of it is not regret, just disappointment, I guess, for myself. How could I have gotten a full ride scholarship and this is where I am? How could I have dealt with everything growing up, like, childhood, but I can't figure things out now? It's just a lot of, it feels like wasted time very far back, but now starting to realize it.
You angry?
No, just, I guess, more helpless, just like stuck in an abyss, I guess.
Help me understand what you're helpless about.
Just not knowing how to, I guess, just better myself.
Okay.
Just in general. I used to be on top of a lot of things, like working out, used to feel smarter. Now it's just this clouded mess of stress. I don't
Okay.
eat. There's just a lot of,
Whose fault is that? Do
uh,
you ever think about that?
it's never whose fault. It's always just, I wish I knew, or I
How,
wish it wasn't that.
okay. I'm going to need to think for another second.
Hmm.
I really appreciate all your bullet points and the thoroughness of your story.
Thank you. Hopefully, I'm not doing too much.
How did you feel when I made that comment?
The thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it.
And what did you say?
In response,
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. There's no way.
Okay. Okay, Dom. So here's, I don't know exactly where this is going to go or what we're going to do, but I'm hopeful for you. And we're going to try to understand things a little bit, okay?
Sure.
So the first is, when I was working in the emergency room, sometimes we would have patients come in that had multiple diagnoses. Like they would have like 6, 7 diagnoses on their chart. And there was a really awesome nurse practitioner who I was working with. And I would ask her, what is this, what's the diagnosis? And she would say, shit life syndrome. So sometimes people just have a bad life. And then what happens is they get labeled with this like particular psychiatric thing. And then like no one ever removes a diagnosis from your chart. They just get added on and added on and added on. And what I'm hearing, Dom, is that you have had an exceedingly difficult life. Like when we're talking about what's the worst hand that you can get dealt, like Dom's hand. Like if we look up in the textbook, what does the worst hand look like? We're going to see a picture of your face. And here's what I hopefully that's not, I don't mean to be judgmental. It's just when I'm thinking about like advantages and disadvantages, when we spawn in the world, you've got a history of severe and what sounds like undertreated mental illness in your direct family, social isolation, stress, financial instability. You also were not allowed to be a child. Right? So like this is where there's all kinds of stuff that I was thinking early on in your story, which I don't think we're going to get to. So for example, like how do we learn what we want? We learn who we are and what we want through creative play, basically. Right? We have to explore and like see like, oh, I like this thing. I'm a dog person. I'm not a cat person. You can never know that about yourself unless you are exposed to dogs and cats. And what I'm hearing is that from this age of 7 or 8, that you and your sister were essentially independent, that you had, like, you weren't given a childhood. You weren't given an opportunity to play or explore or whatever. That in and of itself is devastating enough. Followed by, then you've got this other angle of untreated ADHD, which you should absolutely check out our guide. I don't know if you get access to that by being a guest on stream or whatever, but if you can't afford it or something, just let us know and we'll figure that out.
Already pre-ordered.
Okay, well.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, so so there's just a lot of stuff about untreated ADHD, which I'll sort of summarize for you there briefly, but there's a lot of detail. But essentially what happens is like, so if you're a kid who's, and I think you're smart, so you manage to compensate. But the thing is, a kid with ADHD who's smart, it's almost more devastating. Because like you're 8 years old and you're looking around at the other kids and you're noticing that you're just as smart as them, but it's easy for them and it's hard for you. And it shouldn't be hard for you. You know that you're just as smart as them. And like they can sit down for an hour and learn something, but it takes you 4 hours to learn something. And so what happens in ADHD that's untreated is that you think that there's like a problem with you. There's something busted. And as that persists, a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, then you get a diagnosis. And then there's a whole other thing that happens, which is now you begin to grieve the life that you could have had, which you have every right to do if you had a dad who took care of himself from a mental illness standpoint, if you had more supportive family, if you had more financial security, if you had a rich grandpa. Like, there are all kinds of things about your life that could have been easier for you, and that sucks. So there's like all that alternate universe stuff that you have to grieve. And then even if they just diagnose you with ADHD at the age of 12, if they just fixed one thing, forget about all the other stuff. You're not asking for a whole lot. If they just fixed one damn thing, Your whole life could have been different. You could have majored in the major you wanted. You could have because it sounds like you got a full ride to college with undiagnosed and untreated ADHD. And so the amount of effort that you had to put in, the amount of unfair obstacles you had to overcome to just get, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, you have had to invest 10 times as much effort to get like a 1x yield. And when someone does that over and over, when I have to work 10 times as hard as my colleagues, if I'm lucky, I get angry. If I'm unlucky, I think it's me. You blame yourself or you blame other people. There's a good a theory from Freud that depression is anger directed against the self. So the lack of self-worth is like all of the rage. So I asked you, are you angry? And you're like, not really. And it's like, shit.
It's it's just more acceptance that it sucked and not knowing what to do.
Yeah. So I hear that, and I think there's some amount of healthy acceptance there. But this is the kind of thing where I've worked with people like you in a more psychotherapy relationship over time, which is definitely something I would recommend for you, by the way. And one of the steps that we try to take is like, you need to start getting angry at other people. Because as you become angry, as you assign responsibility for your negative situation to others, you may say, what's the point in that? The point in that is that honestly, it's not your fault. And the truth of the matter is that your parents probably, in a sense, I'm sure you'll say this kind of thing, they did the best that they could. Did they do a good job, Dom?
No.
Right? And how do you feel about that?
I look at the goods of it.
Right? So there's no anger, and there needs to be, because that shit is going somewhere. And what tends to happen is it gets directed towards the self. And then we have self-worth issues. Now we get to your question, which is, how do I let the legacy of the past stop determining my present and my future? And the first thing is that you understand that it is going to for some amount of time, but you see how the past is manifesting in the present. Because what the past is doing is it's manifesting in the present, and then it's directing your future. And the simplest way is that you're not applying for a fucking job as a UX researcher anywhere outside of your country or your company. And I don't mean that do you feel blamed when I say that?
No, just fear.
Right? So like, that's the fear. What are you afraid of?
It doesn't work, or my current job. I don't know. I mean, I guess they're not going to fire me for looking for a new job.
They don't need to know, first of all.
Right. It's just, what if it goes wrong? And then there's no backup plan. It's just, I guess the biggest thing is finally the most comfort I've had is knowing I'll at least get a paycheck every 2 weeks to cover myself, rather than having to do extra side jobs to make things work. So just comfort finally for the first time.
Okay, so that's good. But let me ask you, like, that fear that you feel, that's the legacy of the past. Do you see that? So if you no longer want it to shape your future, you can't listen to it. So this is where so it's kind of interesting, because when the end of what you shared with me really felt more like I'm putting on my career coaching hat for a second, which is that, and this is the thing about career coaching, is that it's not just about what to do. It's recognizing that we have past experiences which become a part of us and then will inform our thoughts and our decisions. And telling you to just apply for as a UX researcher is not going to work. We have to appreciate the emotional challenges that that's going to take. So this is where, like, if you've been comfortable, if this is the first time you've been comfortable for a while, I'd say be comfortable for a little while. Don't add some amount of stress. But my guess is that even being comfortable, you're going to be paranoid.
At one point, I was feeling financially stable until my car broke down. I had to buy a new one. But when talking with my actual therapist,
oh, good, you're in therapy.
I almost had more anxiety and worry that I didn't have anxiety or worry,
Yeah, so there's just all kinds of
which
crap
was
that you've unfortunately like adapted to, and so your journey, Dom, is going to be long. But what I am hopeful for is that each step you take will be brighter. So even though you've got a long way to go, like you're in the pit and the air is foul down here and there's no sunlight and it's damp, but every step you take, the air is going to get fresher. There's going to be sun on your face. There's going to be wind. You're going to start to dry off. You'll start to feel better. There's going to be fruit bushes and streams and rain. Like, like every step you take is going to be better than the last. That I'm hopeful for you that that's the case. And what I see, like, I know that you have issues with self-worth. Let's just sum it up that way. But what I see is someone who's incredibly resilient, incredibly strong, incredibly brave, incredibly has a ton of endurance. And what I also see, what I feel when I see you is actually sadness. Because I think it's really unfair that you had to be all of those things. I don't think you're frivolous, and that makes me sad. Frivolous is the one thing that you are not. And like, that's terrible. That you've never had the opportunity to be wasteful. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think like going forward, what this kind of means is that like, so recognize that your self-worth is going to be built up, or lack of self-worth or negative self-attitude is going to be built up from all these experiences. And I think growing up with ADHD, there's going to be attachment related crap going on too. So all that kind of stuff. You may have difficulty forming relationships and things like that because no one ever showed you what a healthy romantic relationship looks like. So you may not know how to behave in one. There's all kinds of stuff. But I would say if your goal is like present, how do you shape your present and future? I would start with something really, really concrete, which is don't put all of your eggs in one basket at your current job. And recognize that like, and this is where like, I don't know how to say this, but when I talk to people like you, there's an assumption that like, oh, like we have to heal all of the psychological hurt on the inside and go to therapy until you are like cured. But I don't know how to say this, just as a therapist, financial security is so much of mental health. And you can therapize people who are broke for a decade. I don't know that you're ever going to get them to feel like the stress response, like the cortisol flowing through your body, the way your neurons are wiring, the physiology of your stressful situation that comes from financial insecurity cannot be therapized away. Or maybe it can. Maybe I'm just not good enough. This is where like I'm kind of like a simple dude. So I think like, so there's evidence, for example. So there was a program in New York called Housing First, where what they used to do is they'd take people who had addiction problems. And what they would do is like, if you want to get housing, you need to be clean for a certain amount of time. And what they found is that you could give those people all the therapy or clinical treatment in the world to try to get them sober, to get them into housing. But if you flip it around, the outcomes are way better. You just give them a place to live. Then getting sober becomes easier. So there's like decent evidence, and I'm kind of this mind that like, you have to get some amount of financial security and a roof over your head in order to get mentally well. And this is where, like, when we say mental health is more than mental illness, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So in your case, I would really start by tunneling down. There's one thing that you need to change, it's to improve your financial security, which I think you understand and you've worked really hard towards. And that's like, if UX research is what you do, don't negotiate against yourself and like reject yourself before someone else gives you a chance. And that's where it's going to be hard, but I would apply for 5 jobs, 10 jobs, 15 jobs while you're doing this stuff at your job. And then there's also all kinds of other things which you may have never been taught, which is that if you have an offer in hand, does it improve your chances of, or does it better or worsen your chances at your current employer to get the job that you want?
It would better. No, that alone, I think, is huge. That was one of the biggest choosing to stay current job to hopefully get to that position, that just seemed like the safe route where I can then look at other things rather than job. But to hear that, and obviously with financials, huge, honestly, just huge relief hearing that should be a possibility to
So
actually look into.
absolutely. And here's the thing, staying at your current job is actually not the safe route. So like this is the other thing. It's a bit judgmental. It's a bit assumptive, but you're so paranoid about taking a chance that you play it safe. And in playing it safe, all you're left with is one lifeline.
Yeah.
You see that? So this is what we tend to see for people who are struggling in careers is there's a psychological aspect which they lean into, which they learned for a damn good reason. And like I'm not blaming you for believing that because I think you're a smart guy. You believe that because like, you know, like what, like, I mean, in the household you grow up, Dom, once you grab a lifeline, what do you never do under any circumstances once you've got a lifeline?
Gamble it. Take a chance.
Absolutely. You hold on to it. And even if the boat is going towards the edge of a waterfall and it's going to pull you right over and rocks, you do not let go under any circumstances. You don't let go of the lifeline to climb on shore. Right? And so like these are, if you want to let go of the past, like you've got to see all of this stuff and how it informs your current decision making. I'm not blaming you for any of these thoughts. I don't think you're weak. If you need some amount of comfort, if you're not ready to let go of the lifeline yet, even though it's the right move, that's fine too. But what I'm hearing is like someone who has overcome trials, tribulations, someone who will take any opportunity. Like if they're given a single opportunity that they're not fucking handicapped through it all, they're going to excel. And honestly, the same thing, like there's a part of like, I see a part of myself in you, or I'm relating, I guess you could say. Because like, I failed a bunch and then like someone gave me one chance when I entered medical school. And what I told them is like, I've worked my ass off to get to where I am. If you give me a single chance, I will not disappoint you. Mm-hmm. And my life was very different because I had the opposite of your upbringing in terms of all of the advantages, all the privileges, and I fucking squandered it away. Jumped into the pit and then had to climb out. And what I see is someone who's like hardworking, dedicated, loyal. You haven't talked about that, but I imagine you may be loyal to a fault. You know? And so the thing is like, give people the opportunity to employ you. It's a benefit to them. And you may not feel that worth yet, but like, bro, like, I don't know how to say it. Like, just the fact that you're alive today, that you are making it from paycheck to paycheck, instead of being saddled with 8 diagnoses yourself, homeless and drugs and all that kind of shit, like that is an amazing achievement. And I think all you need is like, you just need an even game and you will blow it out of the water. And the thing is, the court is there. You just have to step onto it. But recognize that as you try to step onto it, you're going to have to like let go of the life. Even then, you're not really letting go. Right? Even if you have a good relationship with your manager, you can ask them, hey, I'm thinking about looking for UX researcher jobs. Do you have a sense of like what the timeline is here? I really love working here. Right? So like, I don't know if anyone has taught you language. Have you ever been like taught this stuff?
No.
So like, I'll share this with you because I want to try to make it concrete. I'm not 100% sure that this is the right thing to say, but just to give you an example. So you go to your boss and you say, hey, I really love working here. I really love the work that I do. I really appreciate that this company needs this role, and I think I'm your guy, and I really appreciate that you're advocating for me. Do you have a sense of like how likely this is and what the timeline is? I'm thinking about looking for other UX researcher jobs because that's really what I want to do. You know, if you're telling me that it's going to happen here, then like I'm just trying to understand like what's going on. Honestly, my preference would be I love working here. I want to stay here. And at the same time, what I'm hearing from you is that like it may happen, it may not happen. Now, if you have a real asshole of a boss, they may fire you on the spot or something like that. But like, I think just be honest with people. And this is the wild thing that I think people don't understand. Like, just because you leave a job doesn't mean that you're going to leave on bad terms. Doesn't mean that I've worked with a bunch of people who will leave jobs with bosses on good terms. Boss moves to a different company, says, "Hey, we want to hire you back because I love working with you." And then, like, opportunities will come, Dom. You just keep doing what you're doing. You've done an amazing job, and like, open yourself up to having the world not fuck you for once. Oh, that's scary.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no. That all makes sense.
Questions?
I agree. I think it's helpful.
Questions?
I don't think so. Otherwise, we're gonna go on for way longer. I think we're
Okay.
good. We hit the point.
Okay.
All right, one quick one. So, currently dating my girlfriend almost 2 years. Things are good. First relationship ever. Things are going really well. Great. She comes from like like the opposite side of my upbringing. She knows of like issues in ADHD and just struggling in general, and she's really advocating that I get things fixed. She's very health, nutrition oriented mindset, values a lot of that. To which she's like, you definitely need to start making progress. Nothing in like timeline, nothing. It was all a healthy conversation. Just you need to start making progress on getting better in general. How do I show progress? How do I make sure? Because I've overthought it for way too long. But just, is there a way other than just I am talking to someone? I guess that's really.
Yeah. Okay. I'm so glad you asked, because we're going to try to be a positive part of the world for a second. Okay. So what does she want you to do more precisely?
So I don't eat regularly anymore, and that was due to working way too much. Screwed over my eating habits, so that's a struggle. Groceries, hard for me to warrant buying food.
What do you
If
mean by
there's a
that?
chance, if I buy groceries, there's a good chance that I'll probably just not eat it, or the amount of work that has to be put into cooking won't do, or it might just go bad. And if that's the case, then I just wasted money that could be used elsewhere. So it's hard for me to get myself to buy groceries regularly. So I'd much rather get a cheap meal from fast food once a day if I'm feeling it, maybe not. So eating has been really bad, which then also has then affected energy. My sleep schedule's just been terrible. So I don't have energy to begin with. Also could be because of the food and also the stress. So there's a lot of other things around it. So it's more so getting myself to a point where I'm eating, I can work out, I have energy, and I'm not.
Dom, do y'all talk?
My girlfriend and I?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does she do y'all talk about what your experiences of living and existing are?
Yes. And it started off a lot more of like, the elevator speech of it. And then when this last conversation came up was when I kind of dove like head first into like, here is the situation. Let me try to paint it in a way that makes sense. And she's very understanding. It's nothing, again, none of this conversation with her was bad. It's just, I'm obviously going to take it to new extremes. But yeah, she is understanding. She does know. And she is learning alongside with me.
Okay. Can I think? I'm going to need to think for longer than a second,
Definitely.
because we do have another caller, but I want to try to give you an answer to this, because the world has screwed you in enough ways, and we're going to try to give you a little extra time, but that may make you feel guilty. So I don't even want to say that. Just let me think. Okay. So here's what I think you should do. Okay. Caveat is I know very little about the situation. I know very little about her. I know a little bit more about you. But we're going to try something anyway. Please be critical of what I'm about to say and be thoughtful about how you apply it. So if you have a partner who wants you to be healthier, how do you approach that? So there are a couple of inherent problems. The first is that the tools that she's working with, like the assumptions that she has, like I can buy groceries and I can afford them. There are a lot of like core assumptions that she may have never questioned. So when she sees an unhealthy behavior, her diagnosis of that behavior involves all kinds of stuff that may be very different from why you do the behavior. If that gap is not bridged, y'all are in trouble. Okay? So, because like you're just operating from a different set of rules. And like, if she's playing one game and you're playing another game and y'all end up with different results, it's like, I'm playing a video game on the internet and every 30 seconds my power is going out. And then I lose the game on the internet. That doesn't mean I'm a bad player. It just means the tools that I have at my disposal are completely different. Okay? So what I would start with is try to share with her, this is where I came from. This is where I am, and this is where I want to go. And I would share with her what you shared with me. I would share with her what your struggles have been. I would also share with her what your successes have been, because you've had a lot of them. I don't know. Do you realize you've had a lot of them?
They don't feel like successes, but yes.
I know. So now you need to really be honest with yourself. So let me ask you, if you had if your dad has 8 diagnoses, is in and out of places, y'all are basically broke all the time, you had to raise yourself, no one ever taught you how to study, mom never taught you how to study, never prepared you for your tests, you've got undiagnosed ADHD, how likely is it that you go to college?
Well, none.
How likely is it that you get a full ride to college?
Even less.
Slim to none is your answer for the first question. So is that a success?
Yes.
Does it feel that way?
No.
That's okay. So when you go through this process, you need to be a little bit critical of how you feel and like what you've actually accomplished. Because the truth is you've come a really long way. Right? And so like, this is where you were, this is where I've come, this is where I want to go. I want to be healthy. I want to build a career. You know, like these are the things that I want. Because I think it's important. I know this is going to sound kind of weird, but like, it's important if you're in a committed relationship to demonstrate effort and progress to your partner. So like, you've made progress, but you've still got a lot of work to do. Now, you don't want to kind of come across as, I don't know how to say this, but like, you don't want to be like a victim necessarily, but you also don't want to minimize the shitty hand you've been dealt. That's like a reality. And you've made a progress. You're a fucking hero. And you have a long way to go. And you're going to need some help. But you're planning on doing this. So I think she needs to understand that. So you should share your life story. And then like also like really focus on your wins. The fact that no one ever taught you how to succeed at a job. But it sounds like your manager likes you and is advocating for you. You're a hard worker. You don't give up. You're tenacious. And all kinds of other stuff. That's number one. So I would specify for her where you want to go, including health and things like that. Then I would say to her, what makes it hard for you? Here's what I struggle with. And now this is where things become really tricky. I would ask her all kinds of questions. So when you say I should eat healthy, help me understand what you think keeps me from eating healthy. When you try to eat healthy, what are the reasons that you're not able to eat healthy, and how is it that you're able to get healthy? And she's going to say something like, well, I have to be organized. I have to go to the grocery store. You know, if I go to the grocery store on Monday morning, then I'm going to eat healthy. If I don't go to the grocery store, then I won't eat healthy. Then I would ask her, like, so what are there situations where you go to the grocery store and you throw away groceries? And then I would ask her, so like if you had, let's say, $100 a week for food, how would that change the way that you eat? You know, and then I would kind of share with her that my experience is different. The reason I don't go to the grocery store is because if I throw out food, like that's money that I don't have money for that. I literally can't afford it. And so I sometimes will eat calorie dense food once a day because I get 2,000 calories for $8. And I work a lot. And that's how I survive. I'm not saying it's healthy. I'm not saying I want to stay there. It's just how it works in my head. Now, there are a couple of pitfalls here, okay? So I'm going to give you some tips. Number one, when you talk to her, what is your how do y'all talk? Like physically, draw me a picture. Where is she? Where are you? Where are y'all sitting?
Either across from each other or next to each other.
Never sit across from each other when you're having this conversation. Always sit next to each other. Do y'all hold hands?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would also do some kind of mild, intimate, I don't mean sexual, physical contact while you're having this conversation. So as she understands how privileged she is and how not privileged you are, she may feel attacked. It's very important that you don't attack her. It's very important that y'all don't compare. So it's not about you did this way, this way. The goal in your mind should be, I care about this person cares about me. I want their help and support. These are goals that I have too. But we're each coming with we're playing the same game, but we've got different hands of cards. She's got a straight flush. I've got a 2-7 offsuit. You can both win, but the strategy you use has to be different. So don't compare, ask a lot of questions to understand her perspective. Hopefully, she will ask you questions as well. You should answer them. Be careful about comparison. Next pitfall. Be very careful about problem solving. So as you share certain things, you're grinning. What's that grin?
It's just problem solve, trying to figure everything out.
So
overthinking.
I would make it clear to her that sometimes when y'all are talking, the goal is not for her to problem solve for you. Okay, here's how you buy groceries. Let me help you with that. I would actually be a little bit clear with her that like there's an understanding phase and there's a planning phase. And like sometimes I'm just sharing for the sake of sharing. We'll figure stuff out. Let's develop a plan later, but right now I need you to just listen and understand. And my goal is going to be listening and understanding. And then ask for her support. So like, I may need help with this. Like, how can you help me? And she'll be like, I can give you $100 a week for groceries. Say like, okay, that's fine that you can do that. What else can you do? You may not feel comfortable with that. And you can say like, I just don't feel like, I feel that feels emasculating to me. And I want to be able to do a certain amount of this on my own. But can we just talk about it? Can you help me plan? Can you help me do this? And sometimes it's just going to be about listening. But sometimes, I don't know how to say this, but if she grew up in a household where like people meal plan and do whatever, and y'all didn't, she may actually have information for you that's useful. You just need to be really, really intentional about when y'all are like understanding and exploring and when y'all are developing plans. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
Okay.
Nothing against that.
Any questions or concerns?
No.
Okay.
That does help them. It gave me structure.
Okay. Good luck to you, Dom.
I appreciate it again. Thank you.
Take care, man.
You as well.
All right. Yeah. So in terms of summary, just real quick. You know, when we say mental health is more than mental illness, that's like, I don't know how to say this, but there's just so much evidence that financial security, just like learning how to negotiate at your job, like all kinds of stuff contributes to our sense of peace, security, lowers our physiology, and it's not all fixed in therapy. Like that's just not how it is. Like And so it's good. It's great that we're in therapy. It's good. You should absolutely do it. But also recognize that, like, you got to take care of your external material world too. And that as you can afford to buy groceries and as you can have a savings account with a six months of like emergency savings, that is going to do so much for your stress, your sense of well-being, your confidence in yourself, your ability to try new things, your ability to be motivated. And we sometimes like lose sight of that. So, you know, if you're in a hard situation, don't blame everything on psychology or lack of self-worth or things like that, and honestly acknowledge that sometimes life is hard. All right, let's move on. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm okay.
Can you tell me what you go by, my friend?
Yeah, I go by Tal.
Tal, okay. And tell us a little bit about who do you want to be and what's getting in the way?
Yeah. I think I'm gonna start from like an example and a concrete thing that is happening in my life, and then I'll like generalize from there.
Uh-huh. That sounds great.
So, so I'm pretty insecure about my height. So like I tend to like it's been like this for about 2 years, and like when I walk on the street nowadays, I constantly like compare myself to other people, like my height, and basically I'm not like the main problem and who I want to be is not I'm not talking about the height, but like basically I like obsessively try to compare myself to like these things that I somehow think are like what make me worth like improve my self-worth, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So like I care a lot about like I seem to be motivated to want to like look better, make more money, be like have more status, and that's kind of like where my motivation goes. But if I reflect and like I think what I actually want, it has nothing to do with that. But I get obsessive thoughts and like jealousy and envy constantly like um overwhelming me basically.
That sounds rough, man.
It's okay.
How's that okay?
I mean, I don't know, it's like I guess it could be worse.
I mean, I suppose that's always true, but
Basically, I think for me, the question of who I want to be is actually more like who I want to stop wanting to be.
oh,
I kind of don't. I kind of
beautifully
don't care
said.
about what I want to be. Yeah, I don't really care about what I want to be right now. I just want to stop being compulsed to want to do what I kind of feel pressure to do.
And who is it that you want to stop wanting to be?
A Chad.
Tell me, what is that?
That's like someone who, I think, someone you just look at the street and you like admire them. You like respect them.
You want to be admired or respected?
Yes.
Are you admired or respected?
Could be. Not by me.
Interesting, right? So
Yeah.
let me let me ask you, Tal. So problem solved. But so when you say you're motivated towards improvement in terms of like financial success, status, etc., does that, when you're motivated to improve those things, do those things actually get better?
Oh, absolutely not. Like, absolutely not.
Okay, because you said, "Oh, absolutely," and then there was a nod at the end, and I was like, "Oh, okay, all right." So, okay, and why do you want to be a Chad?
Honestly, I I think I just have like this really big insecurity about myself, and my brain kind of just latched onto the image of something to strive for. I don't know, it's very emotional, impulsive. It's not like intellectually I reflected and I thought, oh, I want these things.
Yeah. So what appeals to you about being a Chad? What does your brain tell you?
It's kind of actually really hard to say what I like about it if I think about it. Maybe I don't know. I guess it would feel safe to be a Chad.
How so?
You're like invulnerable.
And are you vulnerable now?
No, I don't think so. I mean, maybe. Like, I mean, I'm pretty anxious right now. I don't
No,
know
I
if
mean
I'm
like
vulnerable.
so in your mind when you say like a Chad is invulnerable, right? But you're not a Chad.
Yes.
Therefore you're vulnerable, right?
That's funny. No, I'm actually, I don't think I'm vulnerable right now.
I don't mean like in this conversation. I mean, do you feel like you're vulnerable like in your life? Like are you like vulnerable to particular things?
No, I think I'm pretty good at like not being vulnerable or like avoiding situations where I suddenly feel vulnerable. I think the best place to like look at that is like romantic relationships. So like,
I wonder if we're getting
uh,
caught up with term words. So when you say being a Chad is invulnerable, invincible, right?
yes.
So, and I get the sense that when we ask someone, "Are you vulnerable?" Like we mean like emotionally, like "Are you vulnerable?" Like "Are you exposed?" But what I'm sort of talking about is, are you the opposite of invincible in your life? Because you're not a Chad, right?
Yeah.
So if you
I don't think
become
I'm the opposite of invincible.
like, do you feel like if you were a Chad, how would your life be different? Like, what does your brain want from being a Chad?
I have no idea what my brain wants. What I want is just for these thoughts to stop, honestly. Like, I'm just very tired.
What's tiring about the thoughts?
Um, I can just feel them draining, like, my energy. Like, I get into, I walk by on the street, I see someone, let's say they're taller than me or whatever, and I start thinking about it, and I tell myself, you shouldn't be thinking about this, and then I tell myself, no, I should be thinking about it, I don't want to suppress my thoughts, and then I tell myself, like, it's just this, an hour passes by, I've spent an hour thinking about basically nothing, and now I'm tired,
Okay.
and it's like all the day,
Yeah,
all
that
day, every day.
Oh my God, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for explaining that, Tal. So let me ask you, how long has this been going on?
I think it's gotten worse. It's probably been, it's weird. Some of my mental health has become more stable, but these obsessive thoughts have been getting pretty bad. Maybe for 2 years or a year or 2 years now.
When was the last time you felt really confident in yourself?
Um, Honestly, I don't remember.
Can I ask you to ballpark your age for me?
It's 24.
24. Okay. And then were you like confident in yourself when you were, let's say, 20?
No, I don't think so.
What about when you were like 18?
Definitely no. I think I was more confident when I was a child, probably.
13?
No, younger than that. Like, um, I kind of look up to 7-year-old me or 6-year-old me, 8-year-old me, like elementary school me, because, funnily enough, he was more shy, he was more reserved, he was more like less friendly, less social, but he was way more calm, and like I felt like I knew what I wanted back then, and like who I want to be. But somewhere along the way, like I became more social and more friendly, and more extroverted and more like someone maybe people admire, but um, way more intolerable. Like I do not enjoy how I am today.
What happened to 7 or 8-year-old you?
Puberty? Maybe? I'm not sure.
Where did that kid
I
go?
think I was smart and I was trying to optimize myself. And that in combination of being insecure for some reason has led to like developing images of what I want to be, what I should be, and well, the rest is self-explanatory, I hope.
Okay. So you say you try to optimize yourself. Can you give
Yeah,
me
I go to therapy. I've been going for like 6 years now. Um,
Is it
but
helping?
I remember, yes, it is very helpful. Um, basically, I used to be, not used to be, I tend to have grandiose thoughts. So I tend to like, I basically have this like dissonance. On the one hand, I dream of really, really big things and I have insanely high expectations of myself. And at the same time, I think I'm like useless. So,
How do you understand that?
um, I feel like maybe the fantasy or like the setting high expectations is like somehow making me feel better about myself.
Okay. When you start to have fantasies, what does it do for you?
Um, I think it like gives me hope of like fixing things.
So if you give up your fantasies, what do you lose?
Oh, but the thing is actually what I wanted to say is that I became pretty aware of this, of when I start to like fantasize, and I'm able to stop myself, kind of.
Sure. So I'll ask my question again. We'll get to that in a second. Thank you. That's helpful, Tal. But how would you feel about giving up your fantasies? Not stopping the process temporarily, but just no longer fantasizing.
It's a good question, and I think I can recall there was a moment, I think 2 years ago, where I was in kind of a bad place, and then I have a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and my psychiatrist, I called him for like help, and he basically advised me to maybe go to like sort of this place where you go and you like people help you. It's like a village for like people who struggle with mental health, and like it's like basically it was very drastic for me. I never thought about it, but the moment he kind of talked about it, I instantly thought to myself, I don't need this. I'm strong. Like I can handle it because the idea of like um, getting help like that, or I don't know, like basically accepting that I'm in a bad place or that I'm somehow in need of help is was very painful.
Okay. Once again, really happy you shared that. What what would it be like for you to give up your fantasies?
Um, it would just be, it's just painful.
What's painful about it? What does it mean for you? Who do you become when you no longer fantasize?
Someone I don't really want to be.
Tell me about that person.
Well, he's basically me.
That's correct. You're tired of being you. That's why we fantasize, right? Because you
Yeah.
want to be someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you something, Tal. When I fantasize about being something, let's say I fantasize about, you say you're insecure about your height. I'm still struggling about whether I want to ask you how tall you are or not. I don't think
Oh,
I'm gonna.
it's very funny. Like no, you can ask
No,
because
I don't want to ask you.
okay. Okay.
We're gonna leave it a mystery,
Sure.
and there's a reason I'm not asking. So,
Okay.
so when you fantasize about being taller, you fantasize about all of these things. Are you ever gonna get taller?
I'm probably not gonna do surgery, so no.
Right. So what is that? due to your insecurity when you fantasize about being taller?
I don't really fantasize about being taller specifically. I fantasize about other things.
I thought you said you're
Um,
insecure about your height.
Yeah, but I don't like fantasize about being maybe. Okay, wait. Okay, yeah, I do think to myself, I wish I was taller. So okay, sure.
So, but like that's
Yeah.
never going to happen, right? So what does that do to your
Yeah.
insecurity? When you have a fantasy about a version of Tal that is impossible to achieve, what does that do to your insecurity?
I'm not sure actually what it does to my security.
Okay, so let's think through it a little bit. So when we create fantasies, the tricky thing is that the fantasy is born out of insecurity, right?
Yes.
The interesting thing is, does it make the insecurity go away?
No, it makes it worse.
Absolutely. Right? Because it's born out of the insecurity. I wish I was this. So what happens is we have a point. This is where I am. This is where I fantasize about. And the nature of fantasy is that we never move from here to here. Right? Like,
Yeah.
and so all the fantasy does is it reinforces the gap. And it's like, look how
Yes.
far behind I am. As the insecurity gets worse, the fantasy grows.
Yeah, this is like basically what I want to do is like minimize my attention to this gap, or like I don't know, remove
Yeah,
it.
well, we're getting there.
Yeah.
I'm with you, right? So let's understand where the gap comes from. And so that over time, like now I've become more grandiose. And the larger the gap is, the worse I feel about myself, right? Because now the gap is this big. And now the insecurity gets even bigger. And then I dream even greater. And then the cycle repeats. With me so far?
Yeah.
So the funny thing about fantasies is that they actually reinforce our insecurity and they cause them to grow. Because like we tend to fantasize about, the whole reason we call it a fantasy is because it's like not attainable, right? It's not about progress. It's about fantasy. With me?
Yeah.
Okay. Next thing is like, I think it's really important to try to understand where your core insecurity was born. But I suspect that you made a trade. You're just, I mean, based on the information you provided, I think you made a trade many, 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 many years ago. So there was 8-year-old Tal who knew who he was, who was shy, not as good socially. And then Tal looked at himself and said, this is a problem. I need to be better. I need to be more social. I need to be less shy. And so what he did in that little moment is he created a tiny little insecurity that motivated him to improve. And now you're less sure of who you are, but you're better. You've optimized. What do you think about that?
That is actually. Can you repeat that again? Like
So there was
I made a
8-year-old.
trade.
You
Yeah.
made a trade. And 8-year-old Tal was a happy little kid who was shy and not quite as social. And so what that little child decided is that, oh, I shouldn't be this way. I should be less shy. I should be more social. I should be better. And so he traded his contentment for motivation to optimize.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I look better nowadays. I'm smarter. I'm like
Yeah,
I
right. 'Cause
achieved more
object-
things.
Oh
Like,
my goodness.
yeah.
And crazy thing is you're actually like decently tall, right?
I'm average. Yeah.
Right? You're not like a short king at 5'2".
Nope. Nope.
So now this is weird because like despite the fact that you're better, the insecurity grows. And why is that? It's because you made a trade and Tal subconsciously discovered something. That if I feel insecure about myself, it'll push me to improve. And improvement is a good thing. And so you
Yeah,
made
that is
that,
the only way I improve myself.
right? So that's it's like that's what we call dirty fuel. It's a dirty motivator. Insecurity can drive all kinds of stuff. So if you look at, for example, medical students, People who are medical students are very, very neurotic, highly on the neuroticism scale, very prone to worry and feeling insecure. You don't get imposter syndrome amongst homeless people. You get imposter syndrome amongst people who are very, very successful. The more successful you are, the more likely you are to have imposter syndrome. Right? So now we've got to be really careful, because if you want to stop thinking this way, you have to understand, first of all, where the thought came from, and secondly, why it propagates and gets worse. So the first thing is, you were content and flawed, and you traded your contentment for improvement. With me?
Yeah.
Then the seed of insecurity was born, and you started to fantasize, right? Because the cool thing is, like, as you fantasize, it gives you a goal to move towards. You whip yourself to improving. You fix your hair, you get more in shape, you get a promotion, you earn more money. Your life is objectively getting better, and it's all fueled by your insecurity, right?
Yes.
And then the fantasy continues growing, because even as you improve, do you feel satisfied?
No.
So as you move closer to the fantasy, what has to happen to the fantasy in order for you to keep on getting fuel?
It has to give me new goals, I guess.
Absolutely. It has to grow. Right? Because if you achieve it, what's going to happen?
I guess I'll have nothing to do.
There's a part of you that thinks that you're going to be happy, but you were that way before, and I think you're afraid of lack of improvement as well. Right? So now the question is sort of like, okay, what do we do about this? And so
yeah, I intellectually understand this, but like emotionally, I'm still...
We're getting there. We're getting there. Okay? So now we get to like that question I asked you is like, what happens if you give up your fantasies? How would you feel?
I guess I'm gonna feel, maybe now, thinking about what you said, maybe I'm gonna feel directionless or purposeless.
Right? So I asked you earlier, I don't remember what your earlier response was, but it wasn't good. Like, here you are asking me, how do I stop thinking this way? And I asked you a couple times, and I was like, what if you gave up your fantasies, how? And you were like, it wouldn't be good. Because then, you know, I think you'd give up hope, because your fantasy for you is the hope of what you could achieve. And we don't like to give up hope. If you give up hope, if you give up your fantasy, then you stay stuck where you are. Right?
Yeah.
And where are you, Tal? Do you like where you are?
No, not really.
And so here's the wild thing. If you want to let all this go, I'm sure you've heard this before, but now we're going to understand how it works. You have to accept where you are.
Yeah, so I love this advice, because I think on the one hand, it's so simple, it's so correct. On the other, I think when people say it, they don't realize how hard and like, it is to accept myself. It is so difficult.
What makes it hard to accept yourself?
Well, giving up on that hope, I guess, is part of it. And like, I mean, most of the time you're not happy with what you are, so you don't want to accept yourself.
Right? So what are you unhappy with?
I guess, I mean, I'm unhappy about many things. I'm unhappy about the way I look, about
so your mind has to find all kinds of ways to find dissatisfaction with where you are. It's become desperate, because we need all the fantasies we can get. Because the more fantasies we have, the more motivation we have. The more motivation we have, the more we grow.
It's quite funny. I don't remember if it was Dom who said that or the previous caller, but someone said they were worried when they're not worrying. Like, they need something to worry about. I'm exactly the same.
Yes.
Like, some days I just kind of suddenly feel like, hey, everything is okay. This is weird. Like, I need to worry about something.
Yes. So I think that this is where, like, Tal, the reason it's hard to stop this way of thinking is because you don't want to stop this way of thinking.
Yes, I'm very motivated.
So this is the scary thing, right? Because if you stop fantasizing and you stop beating yourself up, how do you improve?
People talk about passion and drive, or like internal.
But you don't feel that
meaning.
shit. You don't know what they're talking
No.
about.
No, I have no idea what
That's
they're
for
talking about.
them. You don't have any passion. Where'd your passion go?
I don't know.
You traded it. Remember when you were 8 years old and you knew who you were and what you wanted? And you traded that peace for trying to improve something on the outside. You gave it away. Because remember, 8-year-old you was happy. He's a passionate, happy little kid. Remember that kid? Life was...
Yeah, man, he was a Chad.
Absolutely. And then the seed was planted. You're a Chad, but being a Chad isn't good enough. And so he sacrificed the Chad to become the Chad. And therein the cycle began. And so, like, this stuff that we talk about, like acceptance, like, you're right, this is hard. It doesn't change the fact that that's what needs to happen. To become the Chad, you have to let go wanting the Chad. You have to understand that you are the Chad already.
So how do I do this?
So, this is tough. So I'll tell you a story. So, as you know anything about Zen Buddhism?
Yes, I am. I'm quite familiar with.
So Zen
but,
Buddhism
maybe just yeah.
Zen Buddhism is going to be like a good fit for you in the sense that it's going to be hard for you, but I think it's the right path. So
It is. It is.
So-
So I hate meditating.
yeah,
I
so you don't
really,
need to
really hate it.
meditate.
Okay,
That's
so what
okay.
exactly
So,
do you
so
mean by
I'll
Zen?
like give you an example. Okay, so there's like a story from Zen Buddhism that someone asked the master, you know, how do I find enlightenment? And the master said, finding enlightenment is like trying to find the bull that you're riding on. Like it's there with you. And so very practically, like I'm going to tell you to do something and I want you to watch when your mind rebels. Okay? So like Tal, you're okay. You don't actually need to change. You're fine the way you are. Like you have made a lot of progress in life. Like you're doing okay. You have some thoughts, some shit that's going on in your mind, but at the end of the day, like that'll get better over time. You don't actually need to work on it. You're actually totally fine.
That is, yeah, it's annoying. It's annoying to hear that.
That's the right response, right? Because we're not talking about fear. We're not talking about desperation. What we're talking about is attachment, annoyance. What's annoying about it?
I don't know. It feels so untrue. It just feels extremely untrue.
Close your eyes, Tal.
Okay.
Look for the untruth within you. Where is it?
What does that mean? Like in my body or
Where is the
in
untruth?
I don't know what that means.
Close your eyes and tell me where the untruth is.
Nowhere?
That's the right answer.
Okay.
Is it there?
No.
It's not. It's a mirage. Close your eyes. Tell me what you feel.
My eyelids are shaking
Okay.
and like I feel very at unease.
Where is the uneasiness?
Mostly in my face.
Okay. What's happening to the unease?
It's getting slightly better.
Now breathe. Feel the air enter your nostrils, into your chest, all the way to the bottom of your stomach. All the way down. And slowly exhale. Now look for the insecurity. Where is it? Where's the dissatisfaction?
It's a bit further in the back now.
Where did it, like, bring it back? What are you doing? Bring it
Bringing
front
it
and
back.
center. Let it in. Close your eyes. Breathe. Don't let it run away. Bring it back. Be more insecure. Feel bad about yourself. Is it working?
It feels horrible.
How did you bring it back?
I guess the words you said themselves can just kind of like help bring it back. So if I was by myself, I would just try to think about it.
Okay. So this is like really important, Tal. You made it go away and you brought it back. Who's in control?
Me. I hope.
Right? Like, I hear doubt, but you are in control of this thing. It's a thing. It's not like the other thing I want you to appreciate is that it's not you. It's a thing that you control. It's external to you. Do you see that?
Well, it's a thing that controls me, but I guess I'm gonna try to control it now.
No, I want you, this is important. It can take control of you, but that's only when you lose yourself to it. Right? I want you to imagine it almost like an orb that can like be in the center of your chest or like further away. And when you lose awareness, it can dominate your thoughts. Right? Like when you're feeling really insecure about yourself, I would say that you're not aware. You're just thinking.
Yeah, like sometimes I can like catch myself like being aware, but it only lasts like a couple of seconds and then I lose awareness.
So this is where like, I don't know how to say this, but like if you pushed it away and if you brought it back, you are in control of it. It's not in control of you, except when you let it fill you. And all you have to do is gain some amount of awareness. As you gain awareness, it will start to get pushed away. It can't exist except in your lack of awareness. And this is the crazy thing is that the more you're settled in awareness, that's when you will be a Chad.
That's weird because for all this time I was thinking I need to be less and less aware. Like be extremely
So I think that, so this is a subtlety, but I think people come to that conclusion because numbness feels good and numbness is also a lack of awareness.
Yes, yeah, I think you're correct.
Right? So, but what I'm talking about is to be aware and detached, not aware and attached. And what people try to do, so there are two antidotes to attachment. One is detachment, one is numbness. And then the other thing to just think a little bit about is to think about that child that you used to be and what trade did that child make? And are you comfortable reversing that trade? Are you comfortable being okay with being shy? Are you okay not improving? It doesn't mean that you won't make progress. I know this sounds kind of weird, but can you, like if that kid, so this is a simple exercise that I'll leave you with. So if that kid, if 8-year-old you came to you and said, I'm shy, I think I should be less shy, what would you say to that kid?
I guess nowadays I would ask him why.
Yeah, so I think that's good. So I think you should. So this is what I hear you're doing with your fantasies and your insecurities. You're fueling them or pushing them away. You're not asking why. Right? So sit with it. Be inquisitive. Let it flow into you and try to figure out where does this come from. Because there are multiple times today that I've asked you questions about like, you know, where this comes from, and it's like a mirage. The more that you look for it, the more that it disappears. It's a feeling, but as you actually inquire, it like fizzles away.
Yep.
And I don't know how to say this, Tal, you just got to do more of that. Right? So when it comes, like, look for, okay, where is this coming from? Is it okay for me to not be perfect today? Because at the end of the day, you just are what you are. And whether you improve or not has to do with your actions. It doesn't have to do with your motivations. But I think that's like difficult to learn because so far you've learned such a good method to become like more externally successful. All you have to pay is your sense of confidence and security.
That's a pretty shitty trade.
I mean, I'd be careful.
Yeah,
there.
I did pick it, but yes.
I mean, so I don't think it's a shitty trade. I think it's all even at the end, right? It's just be aware of that.
I mean, honestly, like, I don't think it's such a good trade because, like I said, it's not like this is actually helping me improve. Like,
Yeah. So I would be careful about that because this is subtle, but you could be falling into the same trap again, which is that you're not appreciating the side of you that made the trade.
why would that be bad?
I'll just say one more thing about this, but I think this is maybe one step further than where you are right now. It's still a judgment. Do you see that? You're still saying, oh, I should be the version of myself that is not making this trade. Same fucking thing.
Yeah, like I'm still trying to optimize.
Absolutely. That's why I'm like, don't be careful about that. I'm not gonna join you there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand.
It's kind of confusing, but I would kind of leave it with understanding why you made the trade in the first place, recognizing that fantasy and insecurity are actually like two sides of the same coin, and that all fantasy ever does is reinforce your insecurity while giving you energy to motivate yourself, which is why we do it. And then if you want to like be free of this, awareness is going to help. Recognize that like you can pull or push your insecurities away. And the most devastating thing is that I don't think you really want to get rid of them. There's a part of you that absolutely wants to keep them because without them, you would be stuck. So you've got to risk, you have to have the courage to like be okay with that and try that for a while. Even if it's for a single day, can you be content with yourself? Can you want to be better, but tell yourself, you know what? We're not going to actually work on that today. We'll work on it tomorrow. Today, I'm just going to be content with myself. And
Yeah,
your mind...
I'm like instantly worried about, oh wait, I'm not going to be productive.
Absolutely. Your mind will rebel. And as long as your mind is rebelling, that's your problem. That's the attachment to your current situation.
Okay. I understand.
Good luck to you, Tal.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're going to need it, my
Bye.
friend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, one more. Ionized. Hello. You're muted if you're... Thank you. All right, there we go. Hello?
Oh, yeah, I just had to mute the Twitch tab. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, now it's all fine.
Awesome. Welcome, my friend.
Thanks for having me on stream, first of all.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here and making it possible.
Well, it takes two, so, like, let's all take credit.
Yeah, absolutely. Love the attitude. What do you go by, my friend?
My name is Julia.
Okay. And Julia, who do you want to be and what's holding you back?
So that is gonna sound super basic, but so I want to be someone who is actually able to make progress and achieve the things they set out to do. And what is holding me back is the fact that lately, for maybe the last year, I have been struggling to basically like function in any meaningful way, and I also seem to not be able to compartmentalize my emotions. So like all the areas of my life are bleeding into each other, so I can barely focus on anything, and I'm constantly mentally exhausted. And it's not like I have not achieved significant things before, like I've achieved a lot of significant stuff before, but after so many cycles of just overcompensating for my issues that like seem like ADHD and PTSD, but I have no formal diagnosis, so I'm just throwing that disclaimer out there. And then I would burn out after overcompensating for all of that. And I no longer have the mental spark that I used to feel when I would get motivated about anything anymore. Like, it's like I have a destination in mind and I have reasons why I want to get there, but the key in the ignition won't turn and I just can't start the car. And like, even if I start, I can stay consistent because it feels like I'm starting just so I can like fail again. And it's like the reasons that I have in my head are like not even enough anymore to like do anything because I can barely get myself out of bed most days. Like maybe 30 minutes before work, like that's my record lately, and I'm back to square one each morning, and it's no way to live, basically.
Wow. That sounds.
Sorry.
No, I mean, I'm just. What I'm really noticing is that you're trying really hard to get out of this situation, but almost the more you try, the more you run out of energy. And the more that you run out of energy, the harder it is to get out of this situation.
Yeah, and it's just like the whole feeling of like starting over because I found like I did find like a couple of strategies that worked for me, but like each time I dropped the ball because I am someone who's like very emotional, and that's like one of the struggles that I mentioned, like that's the second one. And it's no less important, by the way, because this is one of the things like I would like get overwhelmed by emotions. Even my hands are shaking. What the hell? Right now. So I would get overwhelmed by emotions or I would get like burnt out because I'm essentially, if I'm using like strategies, it feels like I'm not actually being who I am, despite not wanting to like identify with the symptoms or like this dysfunction. But like when I'm trying to be organized and function like I assume everybody else does, but they probably don't, it's like I just I get back into things after a while when things get critical enough because I'm motivated by negative consequences and not by rewards, and then the methods that I know work, they just don't spark anything. I don't feel anything. And it's scary, because like
It's
there's
what?
so much that I want to achieve.
It's scary.
I'm sorry?
You said
Yeah,
it's scary.
it's scary. It's like it's terrifying. Yeah, because you don't feel anything, and without that spark, like you can't get like, or at least it takes much more effort. Like when you don't feel that spark. Oh yeah, like we're gonna do it. I just don't have that anymore, and
Is it
it's
okay to
terrifying.
not have that spark?
I guess it is okay, but it just like when you're like that mentally exhausted, and I'm not trying to sound like a victim, I swear, like, but when you're just that mentally exhausted because you're constantly like you're not able to like self-regulate, which is like one of like the whole thing that you're not able to like mark, like just put things into boxes. And when you're at work, you don't think about your like the issues in your relationship and your issues with your friends and your like mental health issues. Like you just focus at one thing at a time. I can't do that. It's everything at the same time, all the time. It's causing me issues with my sleep. It's causing me issues with focus. It's causing me issues with absolutely everything. And like when you're someone like that, like you get exhausted and you can't relate your emotions on one hand, and you cannot regulate your behaviors or like you can do it in a like a forced artificial way using certain methods, but you're just essentially forcing yourself into a mold, and you get even more exhausted. And when you don't have that spark, it's just like you're like basically forcing yourself because it doesn't come naturally to you. And when you feel that spark, so like for example, I had to like apply for a job, and I had to do like a lot of assignments for that. And it like something in me was just like, yeah, we're gonna do it. And I spent my entire weekend on and off like just focusing on that. And it didn't take like a ton of effort because it felt like something, hey, like, we're gonna get that done. It just came naturally to me. But like chores and like normal everyday life admin stuff is what I call it, like cooking, cleaning, like even hygiene, was really hard for me up until like like maybe 1 month ago. Like it was really bad and it started to seem like I was in some sort of like depression. Again, not diagnosed, but it looked like that. I want to achieve the big ticket things, but I don't have the routines. I can't form habits, and if you don't
Oh,
have the basic
okay.
stuff,
Julia,
like
I'm going to jump in for a second.
yeah, I'm
Let me,
sorry.
no, that's okay. So let me ask you a question. How do you decide what to set out to achieve?
Well, okay, I'm loading. It's probably cool to like hear me be silent for a bit. That's what I'm saying. Like when I say my mind doesn't stop, it doesn't stop. So like I guess I don't really decide. It just like comes like through experience. Like I see that I am not satisfied with myself in like one area or another area of my life, and I decide, hey, like what I want to do instead. So maybe by comparison, where am I and where would I want to be? And also through experience, like I've been there in this situation, or I am in this situation right now, and I would rather be in another type of situation, right? So that is kind of like I just go through life winging it,
Yeah.
and
So
there's like almost no planning.
yeah. So I
That's
think
bad.
I think let me just share with you. So first of all, I'm so happy that you're sharing all this stuff. Couple of things to think about. One is that I get the sense that, so let me put it this way. Sometimes in life, we have to put out fires, and other times at life, we try to rebuild what's burnt down. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What I get the sense of is that you're trying to do both at the same time. You've got a house on fire, you're trying to build it and put out the fire at the same time. Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, it does like 50%, and it's like when I one of the first things that I said was like I feel like every morning I wake up and like I'm at square one, and it feels like I'm constantly trying to I am building something, and then it burns down because I cannot be consistent to save my life, and
Yeah. So
it's
here's
like starting over and over and over again.
yeah, so here's what's going on. I think you're spending a lot of energy building one room while the room next door is on fire. So when you go to bed at night, the fire just spreads to the work that you put in. And then you wake up the
Basically,
next morning and it's burnt down. So
yeah, and you
practically,
start over.
so practically, I think there are a couple of interesting things here, because what I'm hearing you say is that you want to achieve the things that you set out to achieve. But I think what we're hearing is that you'll set goals for yourself that you don't have the fuel to reach. Right? You wake up on a particular day and you're
That's
like, I want to be able to do this. But I'm not hearing an appreciation, and there's a good reason for this, so I'm not blaming you for this. I'm not hearing an appreciation for how running on empty you are. And so sometimes, like what I also heard you say that this has been going on for about a year. So like this is where what I'd kind of say is that, like, I know it sounds kind of weird, but don't worry about achieving stuff, worry about stabilizing. Right? So sometimes, like if I'm trying to sail from one part of the world to another part of the world and there's a hole in my boat, my focus should not be in like opening my sails and trying to make as much progress as I can. It should be in fixing the hole, bailing the water, and getting my ship ready to sail. What I'm sort of hearing from you is that there's a lot of stuff that's overwhelming you right now. You continue to set goals for yourself. As you set those goals for yourself, it's hard to achieve them. You may make some progress, but because all of these other dimensions of your life, emotional dysregulation, other kinds of things are like getting in the way, you can't consistently invest energy towards progress. What do you think about that?
Yeah, first of all, yeah, I'm thinking thinking about that. I had to like take a minute. So like this current cycle has been going on for a year, but it's been that way for years. Like I'm 23, soon to be 24, and this has been going on for like maybe since I can remember. I don't know. Ever since I was able to like set goals for myself. So I think I only got through school because I'm, I guess, sort of intelligent. And it's like really frustrating because it feels like one of the other colors had that and he had ADHD as well. So like you feel like it should be easy, and like it's frustrating to no end because you can't get through the basic stuff. Like, so what I was trying to say to start with is that, you know, is this cycle every year, multiple times even, like you overcompensate, you burn out, you overcompensate, you burn out, and you're stuck with the same, like you don't really make, like you don't
So-
always set new goals for yourself all the time. You're stuck on a set of goals that you have not been able to achieve maybe for years because
So-
there's never enough energy.
Yep. So Julia,
even
so let me ask you
think
something.
about
Overcompensate and burnout. Overcompensate and burnout,
Yeah.
right? Why can't you just compensate? Why do you have to overcompensate?
Yeah, because balance is hard.
What
What is balance?
what makes balance hard?
Balance is really hard.
What makes it hard?
Well, not to trauma dump, but like just my upbringing. Like I never had any sense of like a stable adult person that I could just watch their behavior, how they just operate in their like, normal day-to-day life, and like just kind of like learn through imitation, because like adults in my life were just not great role models. Some of them were abusive. That sucks. So like not to trauma dump, not to say, oh, like for me it's just background, but
No, I think it's important background.
I
Thank you
don't-
for sharing. Yeah, so
Yeah.
so as we kind of think about it, so like a couple things pop into my mind. The first is that, Julia, you've mentioned 3 potential diagnoses. You've also mentioned like difficulty regulating emotions. So this is absolutely a situation where I would recommend a clinical evaluation. I don't know how possible that is or accessible that is for you. But this is exactly why, like, so what I've sort of found as a psychiatrist is that sometimes people will try to put their lives together. And just because you're putting your lives together doesn't mean that mental illness is responsible. But what I can guarantee you is that if mental illness is at play, it's going to be a hell of a lot harder to try to put your life together if it's untreated. What do you think about that?
this is a stereotypical thing, but I just kind of missed the last 2 sentences. I'm so sorry.
You lost me
Yeah,
at 2
so, like,
sentences in?
please, like, repeat just
Yeah.
yeah.
So what I was saying is that you've mentioned 3 diagnoses. It sounds like you haven't been formally diagnosed, but you've mentioned 3 potential diagnoses. And one of the things that I'm noticing that you're trying to put your life together, right? One of the things that can really make it hard to put your life together is if there's an untreated ADHD or depression or PTSD. So this is where I'd ask, like, what do you think about clinical evaluation, getting into treatment, et cetera?
I mean, well, I also struggle with anorexia, and I had the most terrible experience. So basically, I'm from somewhere in Eastern Europe, and the mental health care system here is horrible. So like, I tried to get help for like unrelated things, like I said, anorexia. It went horribly wrong, and I was not really like trying to put myself through this because mental health professionals here tend to leave you worse off than you went in. And it's like I trust myself to like kind of stabilize, like not fix myself 100%, because maybe that's not even possible, but like just stabilize without having to essentially like just bear your whole like assortment of problems to somebody only to be treated in a way that leaves you worse off and like more mentally stabilized. So like I'm not here to seek diagnosis, I'm just here like for a couple of tips, and I understand that this is not a substitute for
Yeah.
therapy.
No, so I mean that's so thank you for sharing what your experience with mental health treatment is. Can you just help me understand? Like, do you mind if I ask you one or two questions about your treatment experience?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so like, I've heard of poor mental health professionals in other parts of the world. I mean, we have some here in the United States as well. But I'm curious, like, what did they do that led you worse off, left you worse off than when you started?
So basically, the like one psychologist, if I can even call her that, was sneering and like just really disrespectful the whole time. And then she told me, like, quote unquote, don't even dare think you're strong, because if you really were strong, you would not need other people. And I was like, wait, when did I even say? And the other ones were just the psych ward, like the state funded psych ward, were like, just take these pills, don't research them, don't read anything about them. They were also prone to like like making up problems and just yelling at you for no reason. So
Oh
I
my
was
God.
not impatient. But yeah, that was really messed up. And then one of them didn't really do anything. Just I and they decided that, oh yeah, you're controlling your anorexia good enough, so you're bipolar, take these pills. And these pills made me suicidal. I have not been suicidal or self-harmed. I'm sorry if I'm triggering anybody with all this talk. But ever since I quit these meds, of course, like, not cold turkey, because that would have been even worse. But I quit them and I felt better, and I just was like, okay, I need to pull myself together and get over my eating disorder with like the support of friends, like mostly on my own research. And I'm somebody who researches a lot. So I think the only reason why I'm even here and talking to you and like even alive is because I'm, you know, I guess resourceful and like
Yes.
sort of intelligent.
So
Because if
Julia,
I have to rely on others, ugh.
so let me share. Can I share with you like what I'm kind of hearing from you and how I understand your situation?
Okay.
So I think so. It sounds like you've got a lot of stuff going on at the same time, and like I don't know how to say this, but it just sounds like you're just overwhelmed. I think you've shared with us what it's like to be in your head and like living a day in your life, which is like a cycle of desperate digging down for energy, making some small amount of progress, pushing everything else away, and then being back to square one tomorrow. And then you go through that same cycle over and over again. And every time you go through that cycle, you get a little bit more burnt out, a little bit more burnt out. It's harder to find energy, harder to find energy, harder to find energy. But then what's the alternative? You got to do something. And so in these kinds of situations, like I think that stabilization is more important than progress. What do you think?
The shame, like every year on my birthday or like whatever significant date, you're like, oh, like, yeah, still haven't achieved this and that. And it's like, I completely understand, but like I don't really know like how do you even start? Like one way I made
You
like
start
significant
by
progress was,
stopping.
yeah. Oh. Cool.
Right? Because here's the thing, every year that goes by, as you haven't achieved your goals, you feel ashamed, right? What does the shame do to your energy? What does it do to your thought process? It's another thing that eats away at your energy. And so as you feel more ashamed of yourself, you have to catch up more. So you set a more ambitious goal. As you fail in that goal, you feel worse about yourself. And the cycle continues over and over and over again. And that's what we're hearing from you, is that you're stuck in this cycle. And if we're stuck in a particular cycle, the simplest way to get out of it is to stop doing what we've been doing. Now, that's easier said than done.
It's like,
But what I'm getting
Yeah.
what I'm getting just as I listen to you, my reaction is slow down. Breathe. You don't have to fix everything today. How does that sound to you?
right. So there's like good things that I have like done before. Like I like the weirdest thing is that I have like this proverbial metaphorical toolbox that there are things in there that work. But when I try to come back to them, actual things like setting smaller goals, exercising for the sake of exercising, because I told myself last year and I managed to exercise for like 6, 7 months consistently. Yeah, work out for like the discipline, work out for the mental health benefits, not for looking a certain way, because you have a freaking history of freaking eating disorders. It worked. But now, like, I open my toolbox and I look at the same things that work for me, the same tools, and like I said, I just don't feel anything. So I think I will kind of like just have to like force myself to like restart the good things and just like set this like tiny little goals
Julia,
and maybe try to find.
what are you
Yeah,
hearing me say?
sorry.
What are you hearing me say?
Like, first of all, stop shaming yourself
Okay. What
and
else?
stop trying to overcompensate and like do less instead of more
Okay. Are
and
you
slow down. That's part.
yeah, are you able to be patient with yourself?
Ooh, nope. Not yet.
Why not yet? Are you patient with yourself? Not yet.
Yeah,
That's funny, right?
I mean,
'Cause you're So what makes it hard for you to be patient with yourself?
um, I mean, I'm like, to be honest, I'm trying to not make chat more hostile towards me
Are
because
you reading chat? I would definitely not be reading chat right now. I would absolutely
yeah,
ignore what
that's
chat says.
that idea. Yeah, I'm kind of a people pleaser, like, first of all. So,
What makes it hard for you to be patient with yourself?
um, yeah, bringing again in the way that like I grew up, like generally around peers and stuff, like um, like your parents are supposed to be the ones that you know model the way that you want to treat it like when you grow up in the way you want to treat yourself. So yeah,
Okay.
enough.
So, Julia, here's my two recommendations, which I think may be a little bit unsatisfying to you. And if they are, please let me know, and maybe we can talk about that for a minute. The first is I want you to just focus on one thing, which is patience with yourself. Just patience. You don't have to be perfect by your next birthday. You don't have to have everything solved by your next birthday. What you're telling me is that you grew up in a situation where a lot of the stuff that people who are living healthy, happy lives are given or taught, you were not given the opportunity. It wasn't handed to you on a silver platter. You've had to figure everything out on your own. And what that means is that you can't compare yourself to someone who was starting with like a full tank of gas and being taught everything. So you've got to give yourself time to get better. And I'm confident actually that you will, because you've told me that while the cycle repeats, well, we're also hearing that there are periods of time where there are tools in your toolkit which you've been able to apply for 7 months at a time, that you do make progress. And I think the key thing is that the more you get overwhelmed, the more you try to get out of your situation, the more impatient you become. That actually worsens the whole cycle. So the first thing is patience. Second thing is, I understand you've had bad experiences with mental health treatment. I don't know what else to say, but like, let's assume that this wasn't mental health. Let's say that you came in here and you said, I have a diagnosis of cancer. I've seen cancer doctors before and they didn't really do a good job. If the problem that you have is cancer, the fact that there isn't good cancer treatment doesn't change the fact that you need cancer treatment. Does that make sense? The goal should still be finding good cancer treatment. Does that agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
Now, I'm not saying that just because that's the goal, that that's even possible for you, because I have no idea. Like, you're the one who's been a patient in the Eastern European healthcare system. And if it sucks, it sucks. I don't know what to say. Like, you know, that's the kind of thing. But like the right answer doesn't change just because it's hard or even impossible to find. That's a truth of medicine. You know, if you are in a car accident and someone needs a blood transfusion, but there's no ambulance nearby that can give you a blood transfusion, that doesn't change what the person needs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is that you were treated very, very judgmentally, or people were very, very judgmental towards you, maybe relating to your anorexia diagnosis. But I'd hope that there are good mental health professionals in every corner of the world. I'm not saying they're common, but I mean, I've worked, I don't know where you are from Eastern Europe. We don't need to go into those details, but I've talked to mental health professionals from countries that have, on average, very poor mental health professionals. And there are good people out there. So this is where I think we've just got a very tricky situation, because if you assume that all the mental health treatment is bad, I'm not saying that's a bad assumption. You may be correct. You know more about it than I do. What I'm saying is that if you're wrong, that's a devastating assumption to make. Because if we're talking about a mood disorder, PTSD, or ADHD, and you're like, girl, like, you have a ton of shit to deal with. If you've got untreated mental illness on top of that, that's going to be so hard. So I don't know what, you know, mental health care is like in Eastern Europe. It's a huge problem that we see in this community, because the problem is that like half the world has very crappy mental health treatment, and we kind of do what we can, but you know, I'm happy to give you tips, patience, meditation. But I don't think that a very complex, like, I don't think that there's like a complex thing here, which if we unravel, will fix all your problems. I think in your case, Julie, it's slow and steady wins the race. And I think as best as you can, like, try to seek mental health treatment, maybe even for stuff like emotional dysregulation, or see if there's ADHD treatment or things like that. Because sometimes in the case of something like ADHD, if they're like, here, take these pills, adios, that can actually be okay. Even in the case of mood disorders, you know, some people, like many people here in the US, will treat mood disorders and ADHD with just psychopharm. They'll just take medication for it and it'll like help some. And what I'm saying is that you're in a situation where you can use any advantage you can get your hands on, because it sounds like your situation is not easy at all. And so I'd encourage you to, as best as you can, continue to explore that. Because every year that goes by, as you know, more and more people get trained, mental health care is improving globally in developing countries and across the world. So even if your experience was like this 2 years ago, maybe it may not be like that now. What do you think?
Yeah, like the fact that like I just, you know, had like a bad experience with mental health professionals in my area, you know, because I'm from like a small town and stuff like that. Yeah, maybe not all of them are like that. It's just that, you know, I feel like the biggest problem that I have is like the ADHD or PTSD like symptoms that I have, because I've read a lot about there being an overlap, so I don't really know which one it is. But if and this like this perspective terrifies me, that if I do have adult ADHD in my country, they don't recognize it, and you cannot legally be prescribed medication for it if you were over 18 when they found out that you have ADHD. So like that's just the life ahead of me, is like me having to cope with a lot of it. But at the same time, it's not that terrifying because I know that I might be able to do it. It's just gonna be more like difficult. But I while waiting for like to go like on call, I actually did like Google some, you know, information about mental health professionals and stuff like that, because like the thought popped into my head, like, hey, maybe I should give it a chance again.
Julia,
So,
yeah, I
like,
mean, you seem like a very smart person who does their homework and does everything within your power to try to get a handle on your life. And that, I think, is ultimately going to be like the best sign of hope for you. And what I'm hearing is that if you've done a lot of Googling and you think that this could be an issue, then I think that I don't know how to say it. Like, there's no, like, that's what you should address, right? Like, if you've figured out that maybe there's ADHD, maybe there's PTSD, and there could be all kinds of other things. Like you say, like, okay, there are these problems with diagnosis and medication and whatnot, which is fine. But the whole point is that you don't know because there's a lot of overlap. So that's a question you should answer. If it turns out that you can't get medication or treatment for it, then that sucks, but at least you know, and then we're sure that door is closed. Right now, what I'm hearing that concerns me is that you're choosing not to explore whether the door is closed or not in the first place. And if you go through, you could get a lot better. Now, I'm not faulting you for that choice because I think that there's a damn good reason you're not touching that, which is that it sounds like mental health treatment has actually made things worse for you in the past, which is awful, but it totally makes sense why you would be reluctant to engage with it again. But that's where it's like, I'd say like roll the dice. If you had, and it sounds like it also wasn't just one person, right? You had a team of people who were all pretty bad. So I would just say try again. And, because I honestly think, like, based on everything that you're kind of saying, if you think you have a mental health diagnosis, this just doesn't go for you. This is anyone out there who's listening. If y'all are concerned that y'all have a diagnosis, the right move is to get at least an evaluation and then figure out what treatment feels right for you. And then the other thing is patience, right? You're not like, if you weren't taught these things by your parents, if you didn't have a supportive family, if you experienced a lot of trauma growing up, it's going to take you time to get to where you need to go. And the more that you try to set ambitious goals for yourself, and the more that you dig deep without a solid foundation of moving forward, the more you're going to end up spinning your wheels and sort of wasting your energy. Any last thoughts or questions before we wrap up for the day?
I'm still like digesting the information basically, but I actually never thought about the patience bit. Like, it's all about like doing, and to me, like, patience has always been a more passive thing, and I don't like being passive, I guess, because
yeah, Julia, but let me ask you, how is doing working out for you?
It's not.
So stop doing.
Yeah, I'm loading still.
Good. Perfect. You're a natural.
I'll have to think about. Yeah.
Good. Think about it.
Yeah. You made me shut up for more than like a minute. You're great at what you do.
I'm sorry? I didn't catch that.
Yeah. I said that you managed to make me shut up for like more than a minute, so like automatically that makes you just great. Because like usually nothing stops my brain, so that's wow.
Yeah, and when your brain so here's the thing, the brain is just like any other organ, right? So when your heart is tachycardic, when you're beating at 150 beats per minute for a while, it starts fucking up. And your brain, when it's going 150 thoughts a minute, will start screwing up. So you just need to slow it down. Julia, I really, really hope that stuff gets better for you. You seem like an amazing person who has a lot to offer the world. And like, I think the saddest thing is that your inability to share that actually is not very much your fault. And what I'm really hearing is that you have, in a sense, very little control over like, a lot of the dimensions of your life. But as best as you can for these one or two things, try to do what you can, because we can't fix the Eastern European healthcare system. There's so much stuff here that's out of your control, but cut yourself some slack. Be patient with yourself. You don't need to be perfect yesterday.
Still loading, sorry. Because
Good.
yeah, I've been trying to like be better at listening to people, so
Good, right? So that's
Sometimes that results in like awkward silences.
I
Yeah,
wasn't
sorry.
feeling awkward. I mean, I was okay with it. So I'm glad you're doing
Oh,
what you're doing.
cool.
Good luck
Yeah,
to you.
so like thanks.
You're
Yeah,
very
thank you
welcome.
very much. Like, yeah. Okay.
Don't
Thanks again,
don't give
and
up on
have a
yourself.
great life ahead.
Likewise, don't give up on
Okay.
yourself. Number 1, and number 2, don't expect you to have fixed it tomorrow. Okay? You'll get there. Just be patient with yourself. Good luck to you, Julia. I wish you all the best.
To you too. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, so that's tough. I think we're done for the day. I think we had 4 people, but I think, yeah. I mean, so we're seeing this front and center, where I have a feeling that Julia's life would have been so different if when she got into mental health care, like she had good mental health care. So like there's so many people in our community that their lives would be so different if just one thing had changed. You know, just like one thing, like alters the whole course of your life. And then we sort of end up in a situation that we feel responsible for because like, who can actually do something about my life? It has to be me. Right? It has to be me. And so as you accept that, and as you say, okay, I'm the one who has to fix my life, something subtle can happen, which is that you accept responsibility for the state of your life. If I'm the one who has to fix it, it has to be me that got here. And that's just not true. The truth is that you don't control most of what is determined about your life. You don't get to choose when you were born. You don't get to choose where you were born. You don't get to choose who your parents are. You don't get to choose whether you had cerebral palsy at birth. You don't get to choose whether you have a high IQ or a low IQ. You don't get to choose whether your parents taught you how to study. Did they sit down with you and go over stuff? Did they force you to sit down and learn how to do your multiplication tables? The truth is, so much of our life we're not responsible for. And yet, we're the only reliable agents to fix it. And that's just like unfair, but it's how it is. And so, are you responsible for moving your life in the direction that you want it? Absolutely. Is it your fault that it's such a shit show in the first place? Hopefully not. Now, here's the big caveat. The people who accept too much responsibility for their life that is unfair are the ones that need to displace it. On the flip side, and I think for whatever reason, we don't really attract these kinds of people in our community, or maybe we screen them out. The flip side is also true, where there are people who don't accept responsibility for their life. In fact, they shunt responsibility away from themselves. And those are the ones that paradoxically screw up their life, and they blame the world. Right? Oh, it's like the world is an evil place, when it turns out that they're actually the ones that are responsible. So both sides are kind of equally correct. That there's a discrepancy between individual responsibility and what the world contributes. And the funny thing is, in both cases, you've got to move in the opposite direction. I just get the sense that in our community, we have people who adopt more responsibility than is their due. It's tough. I don't know what to do about lack of mental health care, like proper mental health treatment in parts of the world. Like, and this is both the awesome thing and the awful thing about the work that we do. So the cool thing is that we're at least reaching those people and offering something. The sad thing is that it's not nearly enough and it's not what they need. So we're going to do what we can, and we're limited. And that's okay in a sense. It's not really okay, but it's the most that we can do, which is like how life works. Is the necessity for something doesn't equate the possibility of something. But you try what you can, right? We're going to do what we can. And like, I don't know what to say, but that's as good as it gets. In terms of the work that we do, we're going to do what we can. In terms of what I try to do every day, and even in terms of your life, you can't fix the problems. All you can do is do what you can. And fingers crossed, if you keep doing that, hopefully things will start to get better. And that I feel really confident in, because even if we can't fix stuff, I'm pretty sure we're making the world a slightly better place. Right? We see that. Like, sometimes people get better. Sometimes we help people. Sometimes we have an impact. It may not be enough. I'm not saying it's a substitute for what they need, but it's what we got to give. And even in terms of your own life, it may not be enough, but give what you can to yourself. Give what you've got to yourself. It's not about what you need. It's about what you can offer. Because that's the most that you can do. And the cool thing is, once you accept that and once you give fully what you have to offer, you can be at peace with it. Whether it's enough or not enough is not mine to control. But I can go to bed at peace with myself because I gave what I could. And that's what I got. So we've got Social Sandbox actually going on right now. No, okay. Sorry, not Social Sandbox. We've got Ask a Coach on speaking up for yourself. Oh, cool. That I'm just going to hop into Discord for the last 15 minutes of that. If y'all want to join, we can. I think there are about 100 or so people there. If y'all are not interested in that, I'm kind of curious what people are saying. So I'm going to just move there in a second, but we're not going to stream that because people, may not want to have that streamed. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to ask for someone to raid. Who are we? Kyotomon, I really needed to hear this. Thank you. You're very welcome, Kyotomon. That's all I had to give. Right? And sometimes it can help. Is it enough? I don't know. But it's what I have to give. And do the same for yourself. Zoil? Okay, we can raid Zoil. Let's go. And we'll see y'all. I'm going to hop on over to our Discord and we're going to check in with Ask a Coach on standing up for yourself. So we'll see what they have to say. And otherwise, we'll see y'all on Monday. Take care, everybody. Have a nice weekend.